There we are. So it is currently 6 a.m. on the day that my sister is said to pick me up after school. I don't know when she'll arrive, but I have to this episode and set it to post on Saturday so that I don't miss another day. So, might as well get an early start with reading in the 30 so minutes I have. Well, it's 6:27 right now, not 6 a.m. Anna, if you listen to enough infomercials, you start to believe some crazy things. That Brazilian honey can be used as leg wax, that knives can cut metal, that the power of positive thinking can work like a pair of wings to get you where you need to be. Thanks to a little bout of insomnia and way too many doses of Tony Robbins, I decided one day to force myself into imagining what it would be like after Kate died. That way, or so Tony vowed, when it really happened, I'd be ready. I kept at it for weeks. It is harder than you think to keep yourself in the future, especially when my sister was walking around at the time, being her usual pain-in-the-butt self. My way of dealing with this was to pretend Kate was already haunting me. When I stopped talking to her, she figured she'd done something wrong, which she probably had, anyway. There were entire days where I did nothing but cry, others where I felt like I'd swallowed a lead plate. Some more where I worked really hard at going through the motions of getting dressed and making my bed and studying my vocab words because it was easier than doing anything else. But then, there were times when I let the veil lift a little, and other ideas would pop up, like what it would be like to study oceanography at the University of Hawaii, or try skydiving, or move to Prague, or any of a million other pipe dreams. And I tried to stuff myself into one of these scenarios, but it was like wearing a size 5 sneaker when your foot is a 7. You can get by for a few steps, and then you sit down and pull off the shoe because it just plain hurts too much. I'm convinced that there is a sensor sitting on my brain with a red stamp, reminding me what I am not supposed to even think about, no matter how seductive it might be. It's probably a good thing. I have a feeling that if I really try to figure out who I am without Kate in the equation, I'm not going to like who I see. Alarm. My parents and I are sitting at a table in the hospital cafeteria, although I use the word together loosely. It's more like we're astronauts, each wearing a separate helmet, each sustained by our own private source of air. My mother has a little rectangular container of sugar packets in front of her. She is organizing them with ruthlessness. The equal and then the sweet and low and then the nubbly brown natural crystals. She looks up at me. Honey? Why are the terms of endearment always foods? Honey, cookie, sugar, pumpkin. It's not like caring about someone is actually enough to sustain you. I understand what you're trying to do here, my mother continues, and I agree that maybe your father and I need to listen to you a little bit more, but Anna, we don't need a judge to help us do this. My heart is a soft sponge at the base of my throat. You mean it's okay to stop? When she smiles, it feels like the first warm day of March, after an eternity of snow, when you suddenly remember how summer feels on the backs of your bare calves and in the part of your hair. That's exactly what I mean, my mother says. No more blood draws, no more granulocytes or lymphocytes or stem cells or kidney. If you want, I'll tell Kate, I offer, so you don't have to. That's all right. Once Judge DeSalvo knows, we can pretend it never happens. In the back of my mind, a hammer trips. But won't Kate ask why I'm not her donor anymore? My mother goes very still. When I said stop, I meant the lawsuit. I shake my head hard, as much to give her an answer as to dislodge the knot of words tangled in my gut. My God, Anna, my mother says, stunned. What have we done to you to deserve this? It's not what you've done to me. It's what we haven't done. Right? You aren't listening to me, I yell, and at that very moment, Vern Stackhouse walks up to our table. The deputy looks from me to my mother to my father and forces a smile. "Guess this isn't the best time to interrupt," he says. "I'm real sorry about this, Sarah. Brian." He hands my mother an envelope, nods, and walks off. She pulls out the paper inside and reads it, then turns to me. "What did you say to him?" she demands. "To who?" My father picks up the notice. It is full of legal language, which might as well be Greek. "What's this?" "A motion for a temporary restraining order." She grabs it from my father. "Do you realize you're asking to have me kicked out of the house and to have no contact with you? Is that really what you want?" "Kick her out? I can't breathe. I never asked for that." "Well, an attorney wouldn't have filed it on his own behalf, Anna." Do you know how someone, when you are riding your bike and you start skidding across sand, or when you miss a step and start tumbling down the stairs, you have those long, long seconds to know you are going to be hurt, badly, and badly? "I don't know what's going on," I say. "Then how can you think you're qualified to make decisions for yourself?" My mother stands so abruptly her chair clatters to the cafeteria floor. "If this is what you want, Anna, we can start right now." Her voice, it's thick and rough as rope the moment before she leaves me. "About 3 months ago, I borrowed Kate's makeup." Okay, so borrowed wouldn't be the right word. Exactly. Stole. I didn't have any of my own. I wasn't supposed to be allowed to wear it until I turned 15. But a miracle had happened, and Kate wasn't around to ask, and desperate times call for desperate measures. The miracle was 5'8", with hair the color of silver queen corn silk, and a smile that made me feel like I'd been spinning in circles. His name was Kyle, and he'd moved from Idaho, right into the homeroom seat behind mine. He didn't know anything about me or my family, so when he asked me if I wanted to go to a movie with him, I knew it wasn't because he felt sorry for me. We saw the new Spider-Man movie, or at least he did. I spent all my time trying to figure out how electricity could leap the tiny space between my arm and his. When I came home, I still was walking about 6 inches above the ground, which is why Kate was able to blindside me. She knocked me onto my bed, pinned me by my shoulders. "You thief," she accused. "You went into my bathroom drawer without asking." "You take my things all the time. You borrowed my blue sweatshirt 2 days ago." "That's totally different. You can wash a sweatshirt. How come it's okay to have my germs floating around your arteries, but not on your freaking Max Factor Cherry Bomb lip gloss?" I shoved a little harder and managed to roll us so that now I had the upper hand. Her eyes lit up. "Who was it?" "What are you talking about?" "If you're wearing makeup, Anna, there must be a reason." "Get lost," I said. "Fuck off." Kate smiled at me. Then she reached out one hand under my arm and tickled me, taking me by surprise so much that I let go of her. A minute later, we had wrestled off the bed, each of us trying to get the other to cry uncle. "Anna, stop already," Kate gasped. "You're killing me." Those words, they were all it took. My hands fell off her as if I'd been burned. We lay shoulder to shoulder between our beds, staring up at the ceiling and breathing hard, both of us pretending that what she'd said had not cut quite so close to the bone. In the car, my parents fight. "Maybe we should hire a real lawyer," my father says, and my mother replies, "I am one." "But Sarah," my father says, "if this isn't going to go away, all I'm saying is—" "What are you saying, Brian?" she challenges. "What are you really saying? That some man in a suit whom you've never met would be able to explain Anna better than her own mother?" And then my father drives the rest of the way in silence. To my shock, there are TV cameras waiting on the steps of the Garrett He building. I'm sure they're here for something really big. So imagine my surprise when a microphone gets stuck into my face, and a reporter with helmet hair asks me why I am suing my parents. My mother pushes the woman away. "My daughter has no comment," she says, over and over. And when one guy asks if I'm aware that I am Rhode Island's first designer baby, I think for a moment she might actually deck him. I've known since I was 7 how I was conceived, and it wasn't that huge a deal. First off, my parents told me that when the thought of them having sex was far more disgusting than the thought of creation in a petri dish. Second, by then tons of people were having fertility drugs and septuplets. And my story wasn't really all that original anymore. But a designer baby? Yeah, right. If my parents were going to go to all that trouble, you'd think they'd have made sure to implant the genes for obedience, humility, and gratitude. My father sits next to me on the bench, his hands knotted between his knees. Inside the judge's chambers, my mother and Campbell Alexander are verbally slugging it out. Here in the hallway, we're unnaturally quiet, as if they've taken all possible words with them and left us with nothing. I hear a woman curse, and then Julia rounds the bend. Anna, sorry I'm late. I couldn't get past the media. Are you all right? I nod, and then I shake my head. Julia kneels down in front of me. Do you want your mother to leave the house? No! To my utter embarrassment, my eyes get glassy with tears. I've changed my mind. I don't want to do this anymore. None of it. She looks at me for a long moment, then nods. Let me go in and talk to the judge. When she leaves, I concentrate on getting air into my lungs. There are so many things I have to work hard at now that I used to be able to carry out instinctively. Draw in oxygen, keep my silence, do the right thing. The weight of my father's eyes on me makes me turn. Did you mean it? He asks. About not wanting to do this anymore? I don't answer. I don't move a fraction of an inch. Because if you're still not sure, maybe it's not such a bad idea, having some breathing space. I mean, I've got that extra bed in my room at the station. He rubs the back of his neck. It wouldn't be like we were moving out or anything. Just, he looks at me. Breathing. I finish, and do just that. My father stands up and holds out his hand. We walk out of the Garrahy complex, side by side. The reporters come on like wolves, but this time, their questions bounce right off me. My chest feels full of glitter and helium, the way it used to when I was little and riding my father's shoulders at twilight. When I knew that if I held up my hands and spread my fingers like a net, I could catch the coming stars. Kim, ignore that voice crack. It's early in the morning, okay? Campbell. There may be a special corner of hell for attorneys who are shamelessly self-aggrandizing, but you can bet we all are ready for our close-ups. When I arrive at the family court to find a horde of reporters on parade, I offer sound bites as if they're candy, and make sure that the cameras are on me. Hang on, I need to bookmark where I started in case this isn't properly recording. There we go. Soundbites, candy. I say the appropriate things about how this case is unorthodox, but ultimately painful for everyone involved. I hint that the judge's ruling may affect the rights of minors nationwide, as well as stem cell research. Then I smooth the jacket of my Armani suit, tug on judge's leash, and explain that I really must go speak to my client. Inside, Vern Stackhouse catches my eye and gives me a thumbs up. I'd run into the deputy earlier, and very innocently asked whether his sister, a reporter for the Projo, would be coming down today. I can't really say anything, I hinted, but the hearing, it's going to be pretty big. In that special corner of hell, there's probably a throne for those of us who try to capitalize off our pro bono work. Minutes later, we are in chambers. Mr. Alexander, Judge DeSalvo lifts up the motion for a restraining order. Would you like to tell me why you filed this when I explicitly addressed the issue yesterday? I had my initial meeting with the guardian ad litem, Judge, I reply. While Miss Romano was present, Sarah Fitzgerald told my client the lawsuit was a misunderstanding that would work itself out. I slide my glance toward Sarah, who shows no emotion but a tightening of her jaw. This is a direct violation of your order, Your Honor. Although this court tried to fashion conditions that would keep the family together, family together. I don't think it's going to work until Mrs. Fitzgerald finds it possible to mentally separate her role as parent from her role as opposing counsel. Until then, A physical separation is necessary. Judge DeSalvo taps his fingers on the desk. Mrs. Fitzgerald, did you say those things to Anna? Well, of course I did, Sarah explodes. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. The admission is a circus tent collapsing, leaving all of us in utter silence. Julia chooses that moment to burst through the door. Sorry I'm late, she says, breathless. Miss Romano, the judge asks, have you had a chance to speak to Anna today? Yes, just now. She looks at me and then at Sarah. I think she's very confused. What's your opinion of the motion Mr. Alexander's filed? She tucks an errant coil of hair behind one ear. I don't think I have enough information to make a formal decision, but my gut feeling says it would be a mistake for Anna's mother to be removed from the house. Immediately, I tense. Reacting, the dog gets to his feet. Judge, Mrs. Fitzgerald just admitted that she violated the court's order. At the very least, she should be reported to the bar for ethical violations, and... Mr. Alexander, there is more to this case than the letter of the law. Judge DeSalvo turns to Sarah. Mrs. Fitzgerald, I strongly recommend you look into hiring an independent attorney to represent you and your husband in this petition. I'm not going to grant the restraining order today, but I will warn you once again not to talk with your child about this case until the hearing next week. If it comes to my attention at some future date that you have ignored this directive again, I will report you to the bar myself and personally escort you from your home. He smacks the file folder shut and gets up. Do not bother me again until Monday, Mr. Alexander. I need to see my client, I announce, and I hurry out to the hallway where I know Anna is waiting with her father. Sarah Fitzgerald, predictably, is right at my heels. Following her, intent on keeping the peace, no doubt, is Julia. All three of us come to an abrupt stop at the sight of Vern Stackhouse, dozing on the bench where Anna was sitting. Vern, I say. He immediately leaps to his feet, clearing his throat defensively. It's a lumbar problem. Gotta sit down every now and then to take the pressure off. You know where Anna Fitzgerald went? He jerks his head toward the front door of the building. She and her dad took off a while ago. From the look on Sarah's face, this is news to her, too. Do you need a ride back to the hospital? Julia asks. She shakes her head and peers through the glass doors, where the reporters have rallied. Is there a back way out? At my side, Judge begins to stick his muzzle into my hand. Damn. Julia steers Sarah Fitzgerald toward the rear of the building. I need to talk to you, she calls over her shoulder to me. I wait for her to turn her back. Then I promptly grab Judge's harness and haul him down a corridor. Hey! A moment later, Julia's heels strike the tile behind me. I said I wanted to talk to you. For a minute, I seriously consider ducking out a window. Then I stop abruptly and offer my most engaging smile. Technically speaking, you said you needed to talk to me. If you'd said you wanted to talk to me, I might have waited around. Judge sinks his teeth into the corner of my suit, my expensive Armani suit, and tugs. Right now, though, I have a meeting to get to. What the hell is wrong with you? She says. You told me you talked to Anna about her mother and that we were all on the same page. I did, and we were. Sarah was coercing her, and Anna wanted that to stop. I explained the alternatives. Alternatives? She's a 13-year-old girl. Do you know how many kids I see whose take on a trial is completely different from their parents? A mother comes in and promises that her child will testify against a child molester because she wants the perp put away for life. But the child doesn't care what happens to the perp, as long as he never has to be in the same room as the guy again. Or he thinks that maybe the perp should get another chance, just like his parents give him when he's bad. You can't expect Anna to be like a normal adult client. She doesn't have the emotional capability to make decisions independent of her home and situation. Well, that's the point of this whole petition, I say. As a matter of fact, Anna told me, not a half hour ago, that she's changed her mind about this whole petition. Julia raises a brow. Didn't know that, did you? She hasn't talked to me about it. That's because you're talking about the wrong things. You had a conversation with her about a legal way to keep her from being pressured to call off the lawsuit. Of course she jumped all over that. But do you really think she was considering what it might truly mean? That there would be one less parent home to cook or drive or help her with homework? That she wouldn't be able to kiss her mother goodnight? That the rest of her family would most likely be very upset with her? All she heard, when you talked, were the words "no pressure." She never heard separation. Judge begins to whine in earnest. I have to go. She follows me. Where? I told you. I have an appointment. The corridor is lined with rooms, all locked. Finally, I find a knob that turns in my hand. I walk inside and bolt the door behind me. Gentlemen, I say heartily. Julia rattles the knob. She bangs on the smoky postage stamp square of glass. I feel sweat break out on my forehead. You're not getting away this time, she yells through the door at me. I'm still waiting right here. I'm still busy, I yell back. When Judge pushes his snout in front of me, I sink my fingers into the thick fur at his neck. It's okay, I tell him, and then I turn around to face the empty room. Whew. Man, do I love the Campbell thing. You'll learn later. You'll learn later. But, geez, bro. Recording. Jesse. Every now and then I have to contradict myself and believe in God, such as this very moment when I come home to find a bodacious babe on my doorstep. One who gets to her feet and asks me if I know Jesse Fitzgerald. Who's asking? I say. Me. I give her my most charming smile. Then here I am. Let me just step back for a moment and tell you that she's older than me. But with every glance that makes less and less of a difference. She's got hair I could get lost in, and a mouth so soft and full I have a hard time tearing my eyes away to check out the rest of her. I'm itching to get my hands on her skin, even the ordinary parts, just to see if it feels as smooth as it looks. I'm Julia Romano, she says. I'm a guardian ad litem. All the violins soaring in my brain screech to a stop. Is that like a cop? No, I'm an attorney, and I'm working with a judge to help your sister. You mean Kate? Something in her face tightens. I mean Anna. She filed a lawsuit for medical emancipation from your parents. Oh, yeah, I know about that. Really? This seems to surprise her, as if defiance is something Anna's cornered the market on. Do you happen to know where she is? I glance at the house, dark and empty. Am I my sister's keeper? I say. Then I grin at her. If you feel like waiting, you can... What? Oh, there's my mouse. There we are. If you feel like waiting, you can come up and see my etchings. To my shock, she agrees. Actually, that's not a bad idea. I'd like to talk to you. I lean against the door again and cross my arms so that my biceps flex. I give her the grin that stopped half the female population at Roger Williams University in their tracks. You got plans for tonight? She stares at me like I've just spoken Greek. No, damn, she'd probably understand Greek, Martian, or freaking Vulcan. Are you asking me out on a date? I'm sure as hell trying, I say. You're sure as hell failing. She responds flatly. I'm old enough to be your mother. You have the most fantastic eyes. By eyes, I mean... Give me a moment. Jesse. I need a moment. By eyes, I mean tits. But whatever. Julia Romano chooses that moment to button her suit jacket, which makes me laugh out loud. Why don't we just talk here? Whatever, I say, and I lead her up to my apartment. Given what it usually looks like, the place isn't so bad. The dishes on the counter are only a day or two old, and spilled cereal isn't nearly as bad to come home to after a full day as spilled milk. On the middle of the floor is a bucket and rag and container of gas. I'm working up some fire sticks. There are clothes all over the floor, some artfully arranged to minimize the effect of a leak in my moonshine still. Still. What do you think? I smile at her. Martha Stewart would love it, huh? Martha Stewart would make you her life project, Julia murmurs. She sits down on the couch, leaps up, and removes a handful of potato chips that have, holy God, already left a grease print in the shape of a heart on her sweet ass. Why, Jessie? Why? Why? You want a drink? Don't let it be said my mother never taught me manners. She glances around, then shakes her head. I'll pass. Shrugging, I pull the Labbits out of the fridge. So there's been a little fallout along the home front? Wouldn't you know? I try not to. How come? Because it's what I do best. Grinning, I take a nice long pull of my beer. Although this is one blowout I would have loved to see. Tell me about Kate and Anna. What am I supposed to tell you? I swing down next to her on the couch. Way too close. On purpose. How do you get along with them? I lean forward. Why, Miss Romano, are you asking me if I play nice? When she doesn't as much as blink, I knock off the act. They survived me, I answer, like everyone else. This answer must interest her, because she writes something down on her little white pad. What was it like, growing up in this family? A dozen flip responses work their way up my throat, but the one that comes out is a totally dark horse. When I was 12, there was this time Kate got sick. Not even big sick, just an infection, but she couldn't seem to get rid of it by herself, so they took Anna in to give her granulocytes, white blood cells. It wasn't like Kate planned it or anything, but it happened to be Christmas Eve. We were supposed to all go out as a family, and get a tree. I pull a pack of smokes from my pocket. You mind? I ask, but I never give her a chance to answer before I light up. I was shuttled over to some neighbor's house last minute, which sucked because they were having a nice Christmas Eve with their relatives and kept whispering about me like I was a charity case and deaf to boot. Anyway, that all got lame pretty fast, so I said I had to pee and I snuck out. I walked home and took one of my dad's axes and a handsaw and chopped down this little spruce in the middle of the front yard. By the time the neighbor figured out I was gone, I had the whole thing set up in our living room in the tree stand. Garland, ornaments, you name it. In my mind, I can still see those lights. Red and blue and yellow blinking over and over on a tree as overdressed as an Eskimo in Bali. So Christmas morning, my parents come to the neighbors to collect me. They look like hell, both of them, but when they bring me home, there are presents under the tree. I'm all excited and I find one with my name on it, and it turns out to be this little wind-up car, something that would have been great for a 3-year-old, but not me, and that I happened to know was for sale in the hospital gift shop, as was every single other present I got that year. Go freaking figure. I stab my cigarette butt out on the thigh of my jeans. They never even said anything about the tree, I tell her. That's what it's like growing up in this family. Do you think it's the same for Anna? No. Anna's on their radar because she plays into their grand plan for Kate. How do your parents decide when Anna will help Kate medically? She asks. You make it sound like there's some process involved, like there's actually a choice. She lifts her head. Isn't there? I ignore her, because that's a rhetorical question if I've ever heard one, and I stare out the window. In the front yard, you can still see the stump from that spruce. No one in this family ever covers up their mistakes. When I was 7, I got it in my head to dig to China. How hard could it be? I figured. A straight shot, a tunnel. I took a shovel out of the garage and I started the hole just wide enough for me to slip into. Every night I would drag the old plastic sandbox cover across it, just in case of rain. For 4 weeks I worked at this, as the rocks bit into my arms to make battle scars, and roots grabbed at my ankles. What I didn't count on were the tall walls that grew around me, or the belly of the planet, hot under my sneakers, digging straight down. I've gotten hopelessly lost. In the tunnel, you have to light your own way, and I've never been very good at that. When I yelled out, my father found me in seconds, although I'm sure I waded through several lives. He crawled into the pit, torn between my hard work and my stupidity. "This could have collapsed on you," he said, and lifted me onto solid ground. From that point of view, I realized that my hole was not miles deep at all, after all. My father, in fact, could stand at the bottom and it only reached up to his chest. Darkness, is relative. Brian! I'm actually gonna cut it for today so I can, I have school. I have stuff to do. Well, not today, but for now. So later, once I'm done with school, I'll return, finish recording, and set this to post on Saturday. So peace for now. School is over. Well, it's been over for a while, but I like to take a break after school for a bit. So, looks like this is properly recorded, so I can remove the bookmark from my starting point. Oh, so let's give a review of my school day, because it is still Thursday, and this will be uploaded Saturday. Just a review of the continuity, or the time period, I don't know how words work. But, it was a half day today, for me. It is currently 1:55, so I've been home for maybe, an hour? Yeah. During the half day, so I failed I failed my math class last year, which was geometry, which I shouldn't have been in because I'd never taken algebra. But, so, my algebra class is all freshmen. Well, I guess an age reveal is fine. I'm a sophomore, so I'm in this freshman class, and there was an assembly for the freshmen today. And it was an all-freshman assembly, so no other, years. And by the time it finished, we were in third period. Our periods go by, halves, so there's 1/2, 3/4, 5/6, 7, which is lunch, and then 8, 9, 10 for me, which is culinary. It depends on if you're in an academy or a trade, on if you have, the 3 consecutive, or if you have, a Microsoft course. But, by the time the assembly was over, it was third period, which is the start of my next class, my history class. And by the time I arrived at the door, it was already in session. And I can have terrible anxiety at times, or I can be fine. So I look in the door, I see everyone sitting down, it's quiet, people are doing their own thing, and I get such a sudden bout of anxiety that I cannot bring myself to enter. So then I just walk a lap around the area near the history room, and then I walk by the same person who was monitoring the hall, and she sees me, and she says nothing, and I walk around again, and then I'm I can't do the same lap a third time, then I'll get in trouble. So then I keep walking, and I go down the 400 hall, and well, not 400, it's the 1200 area, which leads to the 400, it's the 1200 hallway. Then I walk down, and then I go down the ramp, and then I'm in the 400 hallway, and I'm walking still, and then I hide in a bathroom. And this class, because it was a half day, it was by the time I was arriving at the door, it was 9:07. So then I walked around. By the time I was done walking around laps, it was 9:14. And then I was I can't keep walking laps. So then when I got to the bathroom, it was 9:28. And the class ended at 9:52. So then I just waited in the bathroom until it was over. It was so sad. It was so sad. And it was so anxiety inducing. Oh my god. Because it was like, oh, I'm avoiding this thing that's causing my anxiety. Oh no, this other thing I'm doing to avoid this thing is causing me anxiety. It's like when you get stuck in a loop and it's like never ending and you're just suffering. That's what was happening for me. So then I was just waiting in the bathroom until it was over and I could go to my favorite class, which is my English class. My English teacher is so chill. He's the best. My friend is writing a story for this guy and like, whoo, they read it to me. I'm not going to say anything about it because like exposing my homie. But ooh, it's going to be a doozy when this English teacher reads it. But, that was basically my day. Hiding in a bathroom. My culinary class, because I'm a culinary student. Maybe I'm giving too much of myself to the internet. Meh, not a lot of people listen to it. But anyway, so I'm a culinary student. And, in the kitchen, since it was a half day and the day before we had, like, taken care of everything, there were only a few dishes to be done and no one wanted to do them. But my friend and I volunteered and our chef was giving out cake. So we got extra big slices of cake. It was great. I like my culinary teachers. We only call them by initial. Would that really do anything? Nah. There's Chef A and Chef O. When Chef O was here today, but Chef A was gone yesterday and today. Because, with spring break, he wants to be here. But, we got cake. And Chef O, she's really nice. She, wants to buy stuff from me because I have a small business. It's not, online yet because I don't know how to do that. And I don't have any, virtual payment methods that would be accepted for me. But, she's very supportive. I recently am, getting a job, an active one. That's not, me being an independent entrepreneur. And she helped me out, allowed me to go to the career center to get help with working papers. Because that's, a thing. That you need to get. And the past 2 times I had gone to the career center, then it was no one was there, so I told her about that, and she was like, oh, go now, and I was like, really? She was like, yeah, go, and then I came back and told her that someone was there that time, and I got help, and she was like, great, and I was like, and she was like, you're not, a pain-in-the-butt kid, so, if you need something like that, you can just let me know, and we'll send you down, and I was just there, I have never experienced kindness. I mean, obviously I've experienced kindness. If I hadn't, then I would be so much more messed up than I am. But, yeah. I need to get back to the book, honestly. Because I don't know when my sister will be here, but it is the day I'm getting picked up, and it is the afternoon. Oh. Sorry, I just saw how much I'd read already. Shoot, mate. Brian. It takes Anna less than 10 minutes to move into my room at the station. While she puts her clothes into a drawer and sets her hairbrush next to mine on the dresser, I go out to the kitchen where Polly is chefing up dinner. The guys are all waiting for an explanation. She's going to stay with me here for a while, I say. We're working some things out. Caesar looks up from a magazine. Is she going to ride with us? I haven't thought of this. Maybe it will take her mind off things, to feel like she's an apprentice of sorts. She just might. Polly turns around. He's making fajitas tonight. Beef. Everything okay, Cap? Yeah, Polly. Thanks for asking. If there's anyone upsetting her, Red says, they'll have to go through all 4 of us. 4 of us now. The others nod. I wonder what they would think if I told them that the people upsetting Anna are Sarah and me. I leave the guys finishing up dinner preparations and go back to my room, where Anna sits on the second twin bed with her feet pretzeled beneath her. "Hey," I say, but she doesn't respond. It takes me a moment to see that she's wearing headphones, blasting God knows what into her ears. She sees me and shuts off the music, pulling the phones to rest on her neck like a choker. "Hey." I sit down on the edge of the bed and look at her. "So, you, want to do something?" "Like what?" I shrug. "I don't know. Play cards?" "You mean like poker?" "Poker, go fish, whatever." She looks at me carefully. "Go fish? Want me to braid your hair?" "Dad," Anna asks, "are you feeling all right?" I am more comfortable rushing into a building that is going to pieces around me than I am trying to make her feel at ease. I want you to know you can do anything you want here. Is it okay to leave a box of tampons in the bathroom? Immediately, my face goes red, and as if it's catching, so does Anna's. There is only one female firefighter, a part-timer, and the women's room is on the lower level of the station. But still. Anna's hair swings over her face. "I didn't mean. I can just keep them." "You can put them in the bathroom," I announce. Then I add with authority, "If anyone complains, we'll say they're mine." That's a person. That's a person. Person? "I'm not sure they'll believe you, Dad." I wrap an arm around her. I may not do this right at first. I've never bunked with a 13-year-old girl. I don't shack up with 40 or 42-year-old guys too often either. Good, because I'd have to kill them. Her smile is a stamp against my neck. Maybe this will not be as hard as I think. Maybe I can convince myself that this move will ultimately keep my family together, even though the first step involves breaking it apart. "Dad?" "Hmm?" "Just so you know, no one plays Go Fish after they're potty trained." "I play Go Fish. That's by myself, but still." If you can't tell, I am a desperately lonely person. I play Go Fish I play Uno by myself. I've had an hour-long game of Uno go by myself. I run this podcast solo. That's why it's like such low quality, honestly. I mean, I've asked for help, but no one really followed through, which is like sort of sad, but meh. Whatevs. She hugs me extra tight, the way she used to when she was small. I remember, in that instant, the last time I carried Anna. We were hiking across a field, the 5 of us, and the cattails and wild daisies were taller than her head. I swung her up into my arms, and together we parted a sea of reeds. But for the first time we both noticed how far down her legs dangled, how she was too big to sit on my hip, and before long she was struggling to get down and walk on her own. Goldfish get big enough only for the bowl you put them in. Bonsai trees twist in miniature. I would have given anything to keep her little. They outgrow us so much faster than we outgrow them. Bonsai trees can grow as big as a normal tree. It's up to the person to keep them trimmed. At least as far as I know. That's what I know from information. I might be wrong. But if I'm right, then suck on that, book. It seems remarkable that while one of our daughters is leading us into a legal crisis, the other is in the throes of a medical one. But then again, we have known for quite some time that Kate's at the end stages of renal failure. It is Anna, this time, who's thrown us for a loop. And yet, like always, you figure it out. You manage to deal with both. The human capacity for burden is like bamboo, far more flexible than you'd ever believe at first glance. While Anna was packing up her things that afternoon, I went to the hospital. Kate was having her dialysis done when I came into the room. She was asleep with her CD headphones on. Sarah rose from a chair with one finger pressed to her lips. A warning. She led me into the hallway. "How's Kate?" I asked. "About the same," she answered. "How's Anna?" We traded the status of our children like baseball cards we'd flash for a peek, but didn't want to give up just yet. I looked at Sarah, wondering how I was supposed to tell her what I'd done. "Where did you two run off to while I was fending off the judge?" she said. Well, if you sit around and think about how hot the fire is going to be, you'll never get into the thick of it. I took Anna to the station. Something going on at work? I took a deep breath and leaped off the cliff that my marriage had become. No, Anna's going to stay with me there for a few days. I think maybe she needs a little time by herself. Sarah stared at me, but Anna's not going to be by herself. She's going to be with you. The hallway seemed too bright and too wide all of a sudden. Is that a bad thing? Yes, she said. Do you really think that buying into Anna's tantrum is going to help her any in the long run? I'm not buying into her tantrum. I'm giving her space to come to the right conclusions by herself. You're not the one who's been sitting outside with her while you're in the judge's chambers. I'm worried about her. Well, that's where we're different, Sarah argued. I'm worried about both our daughters. She's just worried about Kate, precious little Kate, Kate. If you can't tell, and I've said this already, I hate Sarah. Fuck this bitch. Fuck this bitch. Anyway, I looked at her, and for just a splinter of a minute I saw the woman she used to be. One who knew where to find her smile, instead of having to rummage for it. One who always messed up punchlines and still got a laugh. One who could reel me in without even trying. That made me think of She Used to Be Mine, which is like completely different message. Honestly, completely different message. If you've never heard that song, I recommend it. It's sad. It's deep. You feel feelings. Anyway. I put my hands on her cheeks. Oh, there you are, I thought, and I leaned down to kiss her on the forehead. You know where to find us, I said, and walked away. Shortly after midnight, we get an ambulance call. Anna blinks from her bed as the bells go off and light automatically floods the room. You can stay, I tell her, but she's already up and putting on her shoes. I've given her old turnout gear for our part-time female firefighter, a pair of boots, a hard hat. She shrugs into the coat and climbs into the rear of the ambulance, strapping herself to the rear-facing seat behind Red, who's driving. We scream down the streets of Upper Darby to the Sunshine Gates nursing home, in the anteroom for meeting St. Peter. Red grabs the stretcher from the ambulance while I carry in the paramedic's bag. A nurse meets us at the front doors. She fell down and lost consciousness for a while, and she's got an altered mental state. We are led to one of the rooms. Inside, an elderly woman lies on the floor, tiny and fine-boned as a bird, blood oozing from the top of her head. It smells like she's lost control of her bowels. Hi, hun, I say, leaning down immediately. I reach for her hand. The skin thin as crepe. Can you squeeze my fingers? Into the nurse. What's her name? L.D. Briggs. She's 87. L.D., we're going to help you, I say, continuing to assess her. She's got a lack on the occipital. Occipital? Occipital area. I'm going to need the backboard. While Red runs out to the ambulance to get it, I take LD's blood pressure and pulse, irregular. Do you have any pain in your chest? The woman moans, but shakes her head and then winces. I'm going to have to put you in a collar, hun, all right? It looks like you hit your head pretty hard. Red returns, bearing the board. Lifting my head, I look at the nurse again. Do we know if her change in consciousness was the result of the fall, or did it cause the fall? She shakes her head. No one saw it happen. Of course, I mutter under my breath. I need a blanket. The hand that offers it is tiny and shaking. Until that moment, I've completely forgotten Anna is with us. Thanks, baby, I say, taking the time to smile at her. You want to help me here? Can you get down to Mrs. Briggs' feet? She nods, white-faced, and crouches down. Red aligns the backboard. We're going to roll you, LD. On 3. We count, shift, strap her on. The motion makes her scalp wound gush again. We load her into the ambulance. Red hauls off to the hospital as I move around the cramped quarters of the cabin, hooking up the oxygen tank, ministering. Anna, grab me an IV start kit. I begin to cut LD's clothes off her. You still with us, Mrs. Briggs? Little needle stick coming, I say. I position her arm and try to get a vein, but they are like the faintest tracings of pencil, blueprint shadings, sweat beads on my forehead. I can't get in with a 20. Anna, can you find a 22? It doesn't help that the patient is moaning, crying, that the ambulance is swaying back and forth, turning corners, braking, as I try to insert the smaller needle. Damn it, I say, throwing the second line on the floor. I do a quick cardiac strip and then pick up the radio and dial into the hospital to tell them we're incoming. 87-year-old patient, had a fall. She's alert and answering questions. BP 136 over 83. Pulse 130 and irregular. I tried to get IV access for you, but haven't had a lot of luck with that. She does have a lack on the back of her head, but it's pretty well controlled by now. I've got her on oxygen. Any questions? In the beam of an approaching truck, I see Anna's face. The truck turns, the light falls, and I realize that my daughter is holding this stranger's hand. At the emergency entrance of the hospital, we pull the stretcher out of the cabin and wheel into the automatic doors. A team of doctors and nurses is already waiting. She's still talking to us, I say. A male nurse taps her thin wrists. Jesus. Yeah, that's why I couldn't get a line. I needed petticuffs to get her pressure. Suddenly, I remember Anna, who's standing wide-eyed in the doorway. Dad, is that lady going to die? I think she might have had a stroke, but she's going to make it. Listen, why don't you just go wait over there, in a chair? I'll be out in 5 minutes, tops. Dad, she says, and I pause at the threshold. Wouldn't it be cool if they were all that way? She doesn't see it the way I do, that LD Briggs is a paramedic's nightmare, that her veins are shot and her condition's waffling, and that this has not been a good call at all. What Anna means is that whatever is wrong with LD Briggs can be fixed. I go inside and continue to feed information to the ER staff as needed. About 10 minutes later, I finish up my run form and look for my daughter in the waiting area, but she's gone missing. I find Red smoothing fresh sheets onto the stretcher, strapping a pillow under its belt. Where's Anna? I figured she was with you. Glancing down one hallway and then the other, all I see are weary physicians, other paramedics, small scatterings of dazed people sipping coffee and hoping for the best. I'll be right back. Compared to the frenzy of the ER, the 8th floor is all tucked tight. The nurses all greet me by name as I head for Kate's room and gently push open the door. Anna is too big for Sarah's lap, but that's where she's sitting. She and Kate are both asleep. Over the crown of Anna's head, Sarah watches me approach. I kneel in front of my wife and brush Anna's hair off her temples. Baby, I whisper, it's time to go home. Anna sits up slowly. She lets me take her hand and draw her upright, Sarah's palm trailing down her spine. It's not home, Anna says, but she follows me out of the room all the same. Past midnight, I lean down beside Anna and balance my words on the edge of her ear. Come see this, I coax. She sits up, grabs a sweatshirt, stuffs her feet into her sneakers. Together, we climb to the station's roof. The night is falling down around us. Meteors rain like fireworks, quick rips in the seam of the dark. Oh! Anna exclaims, and she lies down so that she can see better. Is the Perseeds? I'm gonna have to spell out so many words when reading this whole book. Where am I? Perseeids. I tell her. A meteor shower. It's incredible. Shooting stars are not stars at all. They're just rocks that enter the atmosphere and catch fire under friction. What we wish on, when we see one, is only a trail of debris. In the upper left quadrant of the sky, a radiant bursts in a new stream of sparks. Is it like this every night, while we're asleep? Anna asks. It is a remarkable question. Do all the wonderful things happen when we are not aware of them? I shake my head. Technically, the Earth's path crosses this comet's gritty tail once a year, but a show as dynamic as this one might be once in a lifetime. Wouldn't it be cool if a star landed in the backyard? If we could find it when the sun came up and put it into a fishbowl and use it as a nightlight or a camping lantern? I can almost see her doing it, combing the lawn for the mark of burned grass. Do you think Kate can see these out her window? I'm not sure. I come up on an elbow and look at her carefully, but Anna keeps her eyes glued to the upended bowl of the heavens. I know you want to ask me why I'm doing all this. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Anna lies down, her head pillowed against my shoulder. Every second, another streak of silver glows. Parentheses, exclamation points, commas, a whole grammar made of light, for words too hard to speak. Friday. Doubt thou that the stars are fire. Doubt thou that the sun doth move. Doubt thou to be a liar, but never doubt that I love. William Shakespeare. Hamlet. Campbell. The minute I walk into the hospital with the judge at my side, I know I'm in trouble. A security officer. Think Hitler in drag with a very bad perm. No. It's so bad. It's so bad. No. Crosses her arms and blocks my entry at the elevator bank. No dogs, she orders. This is a service dog. You're not blind. I have an irregular heartbeat and he's CPR certified. I head up to the office of Dr. Peter Bergen, a psychiatrist who happens to be the chairman of the Medical Ethics Board at Providence Hospital. I'm here by default. I can't seem to find my client, who may or may not still be pursuing her lawsuit. Frankly, after the hearing yesterday, I was pissed off. I wanted her to come to me. When she didn't, I went so far as to sit on her doorstep last night for an hour, but no one showed up at her home. This morning, assuming Anna was with her sister, I came to the hospital, only to be told I couldn't go in to see Kate. I can't find Julia, either, although I fully expected to see her still waiting yesterday on the other side of the door when Judge and I left after the incident at the courthouse. I asked her sister for a cell number, at least, but something tells me that 401 Go to Hell is out of service. So, because I have nothing better to do, I'm going to work on my case on the off chance that it still exists. Bergen's secretary looks like the kind of woman whose bra size ranks higher than her IQ. Ooh, a puppy, she squeals. She reaches out to pet Judge. Please, don't. I start to come up with one of my ready replies, but why waste it on her? Then I head for the door in the back. There I find a small, squat man with a Stars and Stripes bandana. Over his graying curls, wearing yoga gear and doing Tai Chi. Busy, Bergen grunts. Something we have in common, Doctor. I'm Campbell Alexander, the attorney who asked for the charts on the Fitzgerald girl. Arms extended forward, the psychiatrist exhales. I sent them over. You sent Kate Fitzgerald's records. I need Anna Fitzgerald's. You know, he replies. Now was not a very good time for me. Don't let me interrupt your workout. I sit down, and Judge lies at my feet. As I was saying, Anna Fitzgerald, do you have any notes from the Ethics Committee about her? The Ethics Committee has never convened on Anna Fitzgerald's behalf. It's her sister who's the patient. I watch him arch his back, then hunch forward. Do you have any idea how many times Anna's been both an outpatient and an inpatient in this hospital? No, Bergen says. I'm counting 8. But those procedures wouldn't necessarily come before the Ethics Committee. When the physicians agree with what the patients want, and vice versa, there's no conflict. No reason for us to even hear about it. Dr. Bergen lowers the foot he has raised in the air and reaches for a towel to mop under his arms. We all have full-time jobs, Mr. Alexander. We're psychiatrists and nurses and doctors and scientists and chaplains. We don't go looking for problems. Julia and I leaned against my locker, having an argument about the Virgin Mary. I had been fingering her miraculous medal. Well, actually, it was her collarbone I was after, and the medal had gotten in the way. What if, I said, she was just some kid who got herself in trouble and came up with an ingenious way out of it? Julia nearly choked. I think I could even throw you out of the Episcopal Church for that one, Campbell. Think about it. You're 13 or however old they were back then when they were shacking up. And you have a nice little roll in the hay with Joseph. And before you know it, your EPT is coming up positive. You can either face your father's wrath or you can spin a good story. It's going to contradict you if you say God's the one who knocked you up. Don't you think Mary's dad was thinking, I could ground her, but what if that causes a plague? Just then, I jacked open my locker and 100 condoms spilled out. A bunch of guys from the sailing team morphed out of their hiding spots, laughing like hyenas. Figured you could use a new supply, one of them said. Well, what was I supposed to do? I smiled. Before I knew it, Julia had taken off. For a girl, she ran goddamn fast. I didn't catch up to her until the school was a distant smudge behind us. Jewel, I said, although I didn't know what should come after that. It was not the first time I had made a girl cry, but it was the first time it hurt me to do it. Should I have decked them all? Is that what you want? She rounded on me. What do you tell them about us when you're in the locker room? I don't tell them anything. What do you tell your parents about us? I don't, I admitted. Fuck you, she said, and she started running again. The elevator doors open on the 3rd floor, and there's Julia Romano. We stare at each other for a moment, and then Judge gets up and starts wagging his tail. Going down? She steps inside and pushes the button for the lobby, already lit. But it makes her lean across me, so I can smell her hair. Vanilla and cinnamon. What are you doing here? She asks. Becoming supremely disappointed in the state of American healthcare. How about you? Meeting with Kate's oncologist, Dr. Chance. I assume that means we still have a lawsuit? Julia shakes her head. I don't know. No one in that family's returning my calls, except for Jessie, and that's strictly hormonal. Did you go up to Kate's room? Yeah. They wouldn't let me in. Something about dialysis. They said the same thing to me, I tell her. Well, if you talk to her... Look, I interrupt. I have to assume we still have a hearing in 3 days until Anna tells me otherwise. If that's the case, you and I really need to sit down and figure out what the hell is going on in this kid's life. Do you want to grab a cup of coffee? No, Julia says, and she starts to leave. Stop. When I grasp her arm, she freezes. I know this is uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for me, too. But just because you and I can't seem to grow up doesn't mean Anna shouldn't have a chance to. This is accompanied by a particular hangdog look. Julia folds her arms. Did you want to write that one down so you could use it again? I burst out laughing. Jesus, you're tough. Oh, stuff it, Campbell. You're so glib you probably oil your lips every morning. That conjures all sorts of images for me, but they involve her body parts. You're right, she says then. Now that I want to write down. When she starts walking away this time, Judge and I follow. She heads out of the hospital and down a side street, an alley, and past a tenement before we break into the sunshine again on Mineral Spring Avenue in North Providence. By that time, I'm grateful that my left hand is wrapped tight to the leash of a dog with an excessive amount of teeth. Chance told me that there's nothing left to do for Kate, Julia tells me. You mean other than the kidney transplant? No. Here's the incredible thing. She stops walking, plants herself in front of me. Dr. Chance doesn't think Kate's strong enough. And Sarah Fitzgerald's pushing for it, I say. When you think about it, Campbell, you can't blame her logic. If Kate's going to die without the transplant anyway, why not go for it? We step delicately around a homeless man in his collection of bottles. Because the transplant involves major surgery for her other daughter, I point out, and putting Anna's health at risk for a procedure that's not necessary for her seems a little cavalier? Cavalier? I don't know how words work anymore. Oh wait, I can spell it. I've been doing the spell thing. Seems a little Cavalier. Suddenly, Julia comes to a halt in front of a small shack with a hand-printed sign, Luigi Ravioli. It looks like the sort of place they keep dark, so that you don't notice the rats. Isn't there a Starbucks nearby? I ask, just as an enormous bald man in a white apron opens the door and nearly knocks Julia over. Isabella! He cries, kissing her on both cheeks. No, Uncle Luigi, it's Julia. Julia? He pulls back and frowns. You sure? You want to cut your hair or something? Give us a break. You used to get on my case about my hair when it was short. We got on your case about your hair because it was pink. He looks at me. You hungry? We were hoping for some coffee and a quiet table. He grins. A quiet table? Julia sighs. Not that kind of quiet table. Right. Everything's a big secret. Come in. I'll give you the room in the back. He glances down at Judge. Dog stays here. Dog comes, I respond. Not in my restaurant, Luigi insists. He's a service dog. He can't stay outside. Luigi leans close, a couple of inches away from my face. You're blind? Colorblind, I reply. He tells me when the traffic lights change. Julia's uncle's mouth turns down at the corners. Everyone's a wise ass today, he says, and then he leads the way. For weeks, my mother tried to guess the identity of my girlfriend. It's Bitsy, right? The one we met on the vineyard? Vineyard. Or no, wait, it's not Sheila's daughter, the redhead, is it? I told her over and over it was no one she knew, when what I really meant was that Julia was no one she would recognize. I know what's right for Anna, Julia tells me, but I'm not sure she's mature enough to make her own decisions. I pick up another piece of antipasto. If you think she's justified in filing the petition, then what's the conflict? Commitment, Julia says dryly. Would you like me to define that for you? You know, it's impolite to unsheath your claws at the dinner table. Right now, every time Anna's mom confronts her, she backs off. Every time something happens with Kate, she backs off. And in spite of what she thinks she's capable of, she hasn't made a decision of this magnitude before, considering what the consequences are going to be to her sister. What if I told you that by the time we have our hearing, she'll be able to make that decision? Julia glances up. Why are you so sure that'll happen? I'm always sure of myself. She plucks an olive out of the tray between us. Yeah, she says quietly. I remember that. Although Julia must have had her suspicions, I didn't tell her about my parents, my house. As we drove into Newport in my Jeep, I pulled into the driveway of a huge brick mansion. Campbell, Julia said. You're kidding. I circled the loop of the driveway and turned out the other side. Yeah, I am. That way, when I pulled into the house 2 driveways down, the sprawling Georgian with its rows of beech trees and its slope to the bay, it wasn't quite as imposing. At the very least, it was smaller than the first place. Julia shook her head. Your parents are going to take one look at me and pull us apart with a crowbar. They're going to love her, I told her, the first time I lied to Julia, but not the last. Julia ducks beneath the table with a plate full of pasta. Here you go, Judge, she says. So what's with the dog? He translates for my Spanish-speaking clients. Really? I grin at her. Really? She leans forward, narrowing her eyes. You know, I have 6 brothers. I know how you guys work. Do tell. And give away my trade secrets? I don't think so. She shakes her head. Maybe Anna hired you because you're just as evasive as she is. She hired me because she saw my name in the paper, I say. Nothing more to it than that. But why'd Why'd you take her on? This isn't your usual case. How would you know what my usual case is? It is said lightly. A joke, but Julia goes mute. And there's my answer. All these years, she's been following my career. Sort of like I've been following hers. I clear my throat, uncomfortable, and point to her face. You've got sauce. Over there. She lifts her napkin and wipes the side of her mouth, but misses completely. Did I get it off? She asks. Leaning forward with my own napkin, I clean the small spot, but then I don't move away. My hand rests on her cheek. Our eyes lock, and in that instant, we are young again and learning the shape of each other. Campbell, Julia says, don't do this to me. Do what? Push me off the same cliff twice. When the cell phone in my coat pocket rings, we both jump. Julia inadvertently knocks over her glass of Chianti wine while I answer. No, calm down. Calm down. Where are you? Okay, I'm on my way. Julia stops mopping the table as I hang up. I have to go. Is everything all right? That was Anna, I say. She's at the Upper Darby police station. On the way back to Providence, I tried to come up with at least one awful death per mile for my parents. Bludgeoning, scalding, skinning alive and sprinkling with salt, pickling in gin, although I don't know whether that would be considered torture or simply nirvana. It was possible they saw me sneaking into the guest room, bringing Julia down the servants' stairs to the rear door of the house. It is possible they could make out our silhouettes as we stripped off our clothes and waded into the bay. Maybe they watched her legs wrap around me, watched me lay her down on a bed made of sweatshirts and flannel. Their excuse, given the next morning over Eggs Benedict, was an invitation to a party at the club that night. Black tie, family only, an invitation that, of course, didn't include Julia. It was so hot out by the time we pulled up to her house that some enterprising boy had pried open the fire hydrant, and kids bounced like popcorn through the stream. Julia, I never should have dragged you home to meet my parents. There's a lot of stuff you shouldn't do, she admitted, and most of it involves me. I'll call you before graduation, I said, as she kissed me and got out of the Jeep. But I didn't call, and I didn't meet up with her at graduation, and she thinks she knows why, but she doesn't. The curious thing about Rhode Island is that it has absolutely no feng shui. By this I mean that there's a little Compton, but no big Compton. There's an Upper Darby, but no Lower Darby. There are all sorts of places defined in terms of something else that doesn't actually exist. Julia follows me in her own car. Judge and I must break a land speed record, because it seems less than 5 minutes have passed since the phone call, and the moment we walk into the station to find Anna hysterical beside the desk sergeant. She flies toward me, frantic. You've got to help, she cries. Jesse got arrested. What? I stare at Anna, who tore me away from a very good meal, not to mention a conversation I really would rather have followed to its conclusion. Why is this my problem? Because I need you to get him out, Anna explains slowly, as if I am a moron. You're his lawyer. You're a lawyer. I'm not his lawyer. But can't you be? Why don't you call your mother? I suggest. I hear she's taking new clients. Julia whacked me on the arm. Shut up. She turns to Anna. What happened? Jesse stole a car and he got nailed. Give me more details, I say, already regretting this. It was a Humvee, I think. A big yellow one. There's one big yellow Humvee in this entire state, and it belongs to Judge Newbell. A headache begins between my eyes. Your brother stole a judge's car, and you want me to get him out? Anna blinks at me. Well, yeah. Jesus. Let me go talk to the officer. Leaving Anna in Julia's care, I walk to the desk sergeant, who, I swear it, is already laughing at me. I'm representing Jesse Fitzgerald, I sigh. Sorry to hear that. It was Judge Newbell's, wasn't it? The officer smiles. Yep. I take a deep breath. The kid doesn't have a record? The kid doesn't have a record. That's because he just turned 18. He's got a juvie record a mile long. Look, I say, his family's going through a lot right now. One sister's dying, the other is suing her parents. Can you cut me a break here? The officer looks over at Anna. I'll talk to the AG for you, but you'd better plead the kid, because I'm quite sure Judge Newbell doesn't want to come testify. After a little more negotiation, I walk back toward Anna, who leaps up the minute she sees me. Did you fix it? Yeah, but I'm never doing this again, and I'm not done with you. I stalk toward the rear of the station, where the holding cells are. Jesse Fitzgerald lies on his back on the metal bunk, one arm thrown over his eyes. For a moment I stand outside his cell. You know, you are the best argument I've ever seen for natural selection. He sits up. Who the hell are you? Your fairy godmother. You dumb little shit. Do you realize you stole the judge's Humvee? Well, how was I supposed to know whose car it was? Maybe because of the judicial vanity plate that says all rise? I say. I'm a lawyer. Your sister asked me to represent you. Against my better judgment, I've agreed. No kidding. So you can get me out? They're going to let you go on PR bail. You need to give them your license and agree to live at home, which you already do, so that shouldn't be a problem. Jesse considers this. Do I have to give them my car? No. You can actually see the gears turning. A kid like Jesse couldn't care less about a piece of paper that permits him to drive, just so long as he has wheels. That's cool then, he says. I motion to an officer waiting nearby, who unlocks the cell so that Jesse can leave. We walk side by side to the waiting area. He is as tall as I am, but unfinished around the edges. His face lights up as we turn the corner, and for a moment I think he is capable of redemption, that maybe he feels enough for Anna to be an ally for her. But he ignores his sister, and instead approaches Julia. Hey, he says, were you worried about me? I want, in that moment, to lock him back up. After I kill him. Get away, Julia sighs. Come on, Anna. Let's go find something to eat. Jesse looks up. Excellent. I'm starving. Not you, I say. We're going to court. On the day I graduated from Wheeler, the locusts came. They arrived like a thick summer storm, tangling in the branches of trees and thudding hard on the ground. The meteorologists had a field day, trying to explain the phenomenon. They mentioned biblical plagues and El Niño and our prolonged drought. They recommend umbrellas, broad-brimmed hats, staying indoors. The graduation ceremony, however, was held outside under a large white canvas tent. As the salutatorian spoke, his message was punctuated by the suicide leap of bugs. Locusts rolled off the sloped roof, falling into the laps of spectators. I hadn't wanted to come, but my parents forced me to go. Julia found me while I was putting on my cap. She wrapped her arms around my waist. She tried to kiss me. Hey, she said, which side of Earth did you drop off? I remember thinking that in our white gowns, we looked like ghosts. I pushed her away from me. Don't, okay? Just don't. In every graduation photo my parents took, I was smiling as if this new world were a place I actually wanted to live in, while all around me insects fell, big as fists. What is ethical to a lawyer differs from what's ethical to the rest of the world. In fact, we have a written code, the rules of professional responsibility, which we have to read, be tested on, and follow in order to maintain a practice. But these very standards require us to do things that most people consider immoral. For example, if you walk into my office and say, I killed the Lindbergh baby, I might ask you where the body is. Under my bedroom floor, you tell me, 3 feet down below the foundation of the house. If I am to do my job correctly, I can't tell a soul where that baby is. I could be disbarred, in fact, if I do. All this means that I'm actually educated to think that morals and ethics do not necessarily go hand in hand. Bruce, I say to the prosecutor, my client will waive information, and if you get rid of some of these traffic misdemeanors, I swear he'll never come within 50 feet of the judge or his car again. I wonder how much the general population of this country knows that the legal system has far more to do with playing a good hand of poker than it does with justice. Bruce is an all-right guy. Plus, I happen to know he's just been assigned to a double murder. He doesn't want to waste his time with Jesse Fitzgerald's conviction. You know, We're talking about Judge Newbell's Humvee, Campbell, he says. Yes, I'm aware of that, I answer gravely, when what I'm thinking is that anyone vain enough to drive a Humvee is practically asking to have it ripped off. Let me talk to the judge, Bruce sighs. I'm probably going to get eviscerated for suggesting it, but I'll tell him that the cops don't mind if we give the kid a break. 20 minutes later, we have signed all the forms, and Jesse stands beside me in the front of the court. 25 minutes later, he is on probation, officially, and we walk out onto the courthouse steps. It is one of those summer days that feel like a memory welling up in your throat. On days like this, I would have been sailing with my father. Jesse tips his head back. We used to fish for tadpoles, he says out of nowhere. Catch them in a bucket, and then watch their tails turn into legs. Not a single one, I swear it, ever made it to frog. He turns to me and pulls a pack of cigarettes out of his shirt pocket. Want one? I haven't smoked since I was in law school, but I find myself taking a cigarette and lighting up. Judge watches life happen, lolling his tongue. Beside me, Jesse strikes a match. Thanks, he says, for what you're doing for Anna. A car passes by, its radio playing one of those songs that stations never play in winter. A blue stream of smoke flares out from Jesse's mouth. I wonder if he's ever been sailing, if there's a memory he's held on to all these years. Sitting on the front lawn and feeling the grass cool down after sunset, holding a sparkler on the 4th of July until it burned his fingers. We all have something. She left the note underneath the windshield wiper of my Jeep 17 days after graduation. Before I ever even opened it, I wondered how she got to Newport, how she made her way back. I carried it out to the bay to read on the rocks, and after I was done, I held it up and sniffed at it, in case it smelled like her. I was not technically allowed to drive, but that hardly mattered. We met, as per that note, at the cemetery. Julia sat in front of the headstone, her arms clasped around her knees. She looked up when she saw me. I wanted you to be different. Julia, it's not you. No? She got to her feet. I don't have a trust fund, Campbell. My father doesn't own a yacht. If you were crossing your fingers, expecting me to turn into Cinderella one of these days, you got it all wrong. I don't care about any of that. Bullshit, you don't. Her eyes narrowed. What did you think? That it would be fun to go slumming? Did you do it to piss off your parents? And now you can scrape me off your shoe like I'm something you stepped in by accident? She struck out at me, clipping me across the chest. I don't need you. I never needed you. Well, I fucking needed you, I shouted back at her. When she turned, I grabbed her shoulders and I kissed her. I took the things I couldn't bring myself to say and poured them into her. There are some things we do because we convince ourselves it would be better for everyone involved. We tell ourselves that it's the right thing to do, the altruistic thing to do. It's far easier than telling ourselves the truth. I pushed Julia away from me, walked down that cemetery hill, didn't look back. Anna sits in the passenger seat, which doesn't go over well with Judge. He hangs his sorry face into the front, right between us, panting up a storm. Today wasn't a very good harbinger of what's to come, I tell her. What are you talking about? If you want the right to make major decisions, Anna, then you need to start making them now, not relying on the rest of the world to clean up the messes. She scowls at me. This is all because I called you to help my brother? I thought you were my friend. I already told you once I'm not your friend. I'm your attorney. There's a seminal difference. Fine. She fumbles with the lock. I'll go back to the police and tell them to rearrest Jesse. She nearly succeeds in pushing the passenger door open, although we are traveling on a highway. I grab the handle and slam it shut. Are you crazy? I don't know, she answers. I'd ask you what you think, but it's probably not in the job description. With a yank of the wheel, I pull the car to the shoulder of the road. You know what I think? The reason no one ever asks you for your opinion about anything important is because you change your mind so often they don't know what to believe. Take me, for example. I don't even know if we're still petitioning a judge for medical emancipation. Why wouldn't we be? Ask your mother. Ask Julia. Every time I turn around, someone informs me that you don't want to go through with this. I look down at the armrest, where her hand sits, purple sparkle polished nails bitten to the quick. If you want to be treated like an adult by the court, you need to start acting like one. The only way I can fight for you, Anna, is if you can prove to everyone that you can fight for yourself when I walk away. I pull the car back onto the road and glance at her sidelong, but Anna sits with her hands wedged between her thighs, her face set mutinously ahead. We're almost at your house, I say dryly. Then you can get out and give the door a good slam in my face. We're not going to my house. I need to go to the fire station. My dad and I are staying there for a while. Is it my imagination, or did I not spend a couple hours at the family court yesterday arguing this very point? And I thought you told Julia that you didn't want to be separated from your mother. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Anna, I say, banging my hand on the steering wheel. What the hell do you really want? When she blows, it is remarkable. You want to know what I want? I'm sick of being a guinea pig. I'm sick of nobody asking how I feel about all this. I'm sick, but I'm never fucking sick enough for this family. She opens the car door while it is still moving and takes off at a dead run to the firehouse, a few 100 feet in the distance. Well, deep in the recesses of my little client is the potential to make other people listen. It means that on the stand, she'll hold up better than I imagined. And on the heels of that thought, Anna might be able to testify, but what she said makes her seem unsympathetic, immature even, or in other words, highly unlikely to convince the judge to rule in her favor. Brian. Fire and hope are connected, just so you know. The way the Greeks told it, Zeus put Prometheus and Epimetheus in charge of creating life on Earth. Epimetheus made the animals, giving out bonuses like swiftness and strength and fur and wings. By the time Prometheus made man, all the best qualities had been given out. He settled for making them walk upright, and he gave them fire. Zeus, pissed off, took it away, but Prometheus saw his pride and joy shivering and unable to cook. He lit a torch from the sun and brought it to man again. To punish Prometheus, Zeus had him chained to a rock, where an eagle fed on his liver. To punish man, Zeus created the first woman, Pandora, and gave her a gift, a box she was forbidden to open. Pandora's curiosity got the best of her, and one day she opened that box. Out came plagues and misery and mischief. She managed to shut the lid tight before hope escaped. It's the only weapon we have left to fight the others. Ask any fireman, he'll tell you it's true. Hell, ask any father. Come on up, I say to Campbell Alexander when he arrives with Anna. There's fresh coffee. He follows me up the stairs, his German shepherd trailing. I pour 2 cups. What's the dog for? He's a chick magnet, the lawyer says. Got any milk? I pass him the carton from the fridge, then sit down with my own mug. It's quiet up here. The boys are downstairs washing the engines and doing their daily maintenance. So, Alexander takes a sip of his coffee. Anna tells me that you've both moved out. Yeah, I sort of figured you might want to ask me about that. You do realize that your wife is opposing counsel, he says carefully. I meet his eye. I suppose by that you mean do I realize that I shouldn't be sitting here talking to you? That only becomes an issue if your wife is still representing you. I never asked Anna to represent me. Alexander frowns. I'm not sure she's aware of that. Look, with all due respect, this may seem like an incredibly big deal, and it is, but we have another incredibly big deal going on at the same time. Our oldest daughter's been hospitalized, and, well, Sarah's fighting on 2 fronts. I know, and I'm sorry about Kate, Mr. Fitzgerald, he says. Call me Brian. I cup my hands around my mug, and I would like to speak to you, without Sarah around. He leans back in the folding chair. How about right now? It's not a good time, but it will never be a good time for this. Okay. I take a deep breath. I think Anna's right. At first, I'm not sure Campbell Alexander's even heard me. Then he asks, Are you willing to tell that to the judge at a hearing? I look down at my coffee. I think I have to. By the time Polly and I responded to this morning's ambulance call, the boyfriend already had the girl in a shower. She sat on the bottom, her legs sprayed around the drain. splayed around the drain, fully dressed. Her hair was matted on to the front of her face, but even if it wasn't, I'd have known she was unconscious. Polly got right inside and started to drag her out. Her name's Magda, the boyfriend said. She's gonna be okay, right? Is she diabetic? What does that matter? For Christ's sake. Tell me what you were using, I demanded. You were just getting drunk, the boyfriend said. Tequila. He was more than 17, old enough to have heard the myth that a shower will bring someone out of a heroin overdose. Let me explain this to you. My buddy and I want to help Magda, to save her life, but if you tell me that she's got alcohol in her system and it turns out that it's a drug instead, whatever we give her could backfire and make her even worse. You get that? By then, just outside the shower stall, Polly had wrestled Magda out of her shirt. There were tracks up and down her arms. If it's tequila, then they've been shooting it up. Coma cocktail? I took the Narcan out of the paramedic bag and handed Polly the equipment for a microdrip. So, the boy said, you're not going to tell the cops, are you? In one quick move, I grabbed him by the neck of his shirt and pushed him up against the wall. Are you that fucking stupid? It's just that my parents will kill me. You didn't seem to care much if you killed yourself. Or her. I jerked his head toward the girl, who by then was vomiting all over the floor. You think life is something you can throw out like a piece of trash? You think you OD and get a second chance? I was yelling hard into his face. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Polly. Step down, Cap, he said under his breath. Slowly I realized that the kid was trembling in front of me, that he really had nothing to do with the reason I was yelling. I walked away to clear my head. Polly finished up with the patient and then came back to me. You know, if it's too much, we can cover for you, he offered. The chief will give you as much time off as you want. I need to work. Over his shoulder I could see the girl pinking up, the boy sobbing into his hands beside her. I looked Polly in the eye. When I'm not here, I explained, I have to be there. The lawyer and I finish up our coffee. Second cup? Oh, my voice, God. Second cup, I offer. I'd better not. I have to get back to the office. We nod at each other. But there is really nothing left to say. Don't worry about Anna, I add. I'll make sure she gets whatever she needs. You might want to check in at home, too, Alexander says. I just got your son released on PR bail for stealing a judge's Humvee. He puts his coffee cup in the sink and leaves me holding this information, knowing sooner or later it will force me to my knees. Sarah, 1997. No matter how many times you drive to the emergency room, it never becomes routine. Brian carries our daughter in his arms, blood running down her face. The triad nurse waves us inside, shepherds the other kids to the bank of plastic chairs where they can wait. A resident comes into the cubicle, all business. What happened? She went over the handlebars of her bike, I said. She landed on concrete. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of concussion, but there's a scalp black at the hairline of about an inch and a half. The doctor lays her down gently on the table, snaps on gloves, and peers at her forehead. Are you a doctor or a nurse? I try to smile. Just used to this. It takes 82 stitches to sew up the gash. Afterward, with a bright white patch of gauze taped to her head and a hefty dose of pediatric Tylenol swimming through her veins, we walk out to the waiting area, hand in hand. Jessie asks her how many stitches she needed. Brian tells her she was just as brave as a firefighter. Kate glances at Anna's fresh bandage. I like it better when I get to sit out here, she says. My hands got stuck. It starts when Kate screams in the bathroom. I race upstairs and jimmy the lock to find my 9-year-old standing in front of a toilet spattered with blood. Blood runs down her legs, too, and has soaked through her underpants. This is the calling card for APL. hemorrhage, and all sorts of masks and disguises. Anna's had rectal bleeding before, but she was a toddler. She would not remember. It's all right, I say. I say calmly. I get a warm washcloth to clean her up and find a sanitary napkin for her underwear. I watch her try to position the bulk of the pad between her legs. This is the moment I would have had with her when she got her period. Will she live long enough for that? Mom, Kate says, it's back. Clinical relapse. Dr. Chance takes off his glasses and presses his thumb to the corners of his eyes. I think a bone marrow transplant's the way to go. My mind jumps to a memory of an inflatable bozo punching bag I had when I was Anna's age, filled with sand at the bottom. I'd whack it only to have it pop back up. But a few months ago, Brian says, you told us they were dangerous. They are. 50% of patients who receive BMTs are cured. The other half don't survive the chemo and the radiation leading up to the transplant. Some are killed by the complications they develop after the transplant's done. Brian looks at me, and then speaks the fear that ripples between us. Then why would we even put Kate at risk? Because if you don't, Dr. Chance explains, she will die. The first time I call the insurance company, they hang up on me by mistake. The second time, I wait through Muzak for 22 minutes before reaching a customer service representative. Can I have your policy number? I give her the one all municipal employees get, and Brian's social security number. How can I help you? I spoke to someone there a week ago, I explained. My daughter has leukemia and needs a bone marrow transplant. The hospital explained that our insurance company needs to sign off on coverage. A bone marrow transplant costs $100,000 upward. Needless to say, we don't have that kind of cash lying around. But just because a doctor has recommended the transplant doesn't mean that our insurance company will agree. That sort of procedure needs a special review. Yes, I know. That's where we were a week ago. I'm calling because I haven't heard back from you yet. She puts me on hold so that she can look up my file. I hear a subtle click and then the tinny voice of a recorded operator. If you'd like to make a call. Shit. I slammed down the phone. Anna, vigilant, pokes her head around the doorway. You said a bad word. I know. I pick up the receiver and hit the redial button. I wind my way through the touchtone menu. Finally, I reach a living person. I was just disconnected. Again. It takes this rep 5 more minutes to take down all the same numbers and names and history I have already given her predecessors. We actually have reviewed your daughter's case, the woman says. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't think that procedure is in her best interests. I feel heat rush to my face. Is dying? In preparation for the bone marrow harvest, I have to give Anna ongoing growth factor shots, just like I once gave Kate after her initial cord blood transplant. The intent is to hyperpack Anna's marrow, so that when it is time to withdraw the cells, there will be plenty for Kate. Anna has been told this, too, but all she knows is that twice a day, her mother has to give her a shot. We use EMLA cream, a topical anesthetic. The cream is supposed to keep her from feeling the prick of the needle, but she still yells. I wonder if it hurts as much as having your 6-year-old stare you in the eye and say she hates you. Mrs. Fitzgerald, the insurance company's customer service supervisor, says, we appreciate where you're coming from, truly. Somehow, I find that very hard to believe, I say. Somehow I doubt that you have a daughter in a life-or-death situation, and that your advisory board isn't looking solely at the bottom-line cost of a transplant. I have told myself that I will not lose my temper, and already 30 seconds into this phone call with the insurance company, I have ceded the battle. AmeriLife will pay 90% of what's considered reasonable and customary for a donor lymphocyte infusion. However, should you still choose to do a bone marrow transplant, we are willing to cover 10% of the costs. I take a deep breath. The doctors on your board who recommended this. What's your specialty? It's not acute promyelocytic leukemia, though, is it? Because even an oncologist who graduated last in his class from some hack medical school in Guam could probably tell you that a DLI isn't going to work as a cure. That 3 months from now, we'll be having this same discussion again. Plus, if you'd ask a doctor who had any familiarity with my daughter's particular disease burden, he'd tell you that repeating a treatment that's already been tried is highly unlikely to produce results in an APL patient because they develop a resistance. Which means that Amerilife is basically agreeing to throw money down a toilet but not spend it on the one thing that might actually have a chance of saving my child's life. There is a pregnant bubble of silence on the other end of the phone. Mrs. Fitzgerald, the supervisor suggests, it's my understanding that if you follow this protocol, the insurance company would have no problems then paying for the transplant. Except that my daughter might not be alive by then to get it. We aren't talking about a car, where we can try a used part first and if it doesn't work, get a new one shipped in. We're talking about a human being. A human being. Do you automatons there even know what the hell that is? This time, I'm expecting the click when I am disconnected. Zan shows up the night before we are due to go to the hospital to begin Aunt Kate's preparatory transplant regimen. She lets Jessie help her set up her portable office, takes a phone call from Australia, and then comes into the kitchen so that Brian and I can catch her up on daily routines. Anna's got gymnastics on Tuesday, I tell her, 3 o'clock, and I expect that oil truck to come sometime this week. The trash goes out on Wednesday, Brian adds. Don't walk Jessie into school. Apparently, that's anathema for 6th graders. She nods and listens and even takes notes, and then says she has a couple of questions. The fish gets fed twice a day. Jessie can do it, if you remind him. Is there an official bedtime? Zan asks. Yeah, I reply. Do you want me to give you the real one? Or the one you can use if you're going to tack on an extra hour as a special treat? Anna's 8 o'clock, Brian says. Jessie's 10. Anything else? Yes. Zan reaches into her pocket and takes out a check made out to us for $100,000. Suzanne, I say, stunned. We can't take that. I know how much it costs. You can't cover it. I can. Let me. Brian picks up the check and hands it back to her. Thank you, he says, but actually, we've got the transplant covered. This is news to me. We do? The guys at the station sent out a call to arms, nationwide, and got a bunch of donations from other firefighters. Brian looks at me. I just found out today. Really? Inside me a weight lifts. He shrugs. They're my brothers, he explains. I turn to Zan and hug her. Thank you for even offering. It's here if you need it, she answers, but we don't. We are able to do this, at least. Kate, I call the next morning. It's time to go. Anna is curled on Zan's lap on the couch. She pulls her thumb out of her mouth, but she doesn't say goodbye. Kate, I yell again. We're leaving. Jessie smirks over his Nintendo controls, like he'd really take off without her. She doesn't know that. Kate! Sighing, I swing up the stairs toward her bedroom. The door is closed. With a soft knock, I push it open, and find Kate in the final throes of making her bed. The quilt is pulled tight enough to bounce a dime off its middle. The pillows have been fluffed and centered. Her stuffed animals, relics at this point, sit on the window seat in gradated succession, tallest to smallest. Even her shoes have been neatly arranged in her closet, and the mess on her desk has vanished. Okay, I haven't even asked her to clean up. Clearly, I'm in the wrong bedroom. She turns. It's in case I don't come back, she says. Shit, dude, Kate is dark as hell, mate. Apparently my mom texted me, so checked what my mom wanted. When I first became a parent, I used to lie in bed at night and imagine the most horrible successions of maladies. The bite of a jellyfish, the taste of a poisonous berry, the smile of a dangerous stranger, the dive into a shallow pool. There are so many ways a child can be harmed that it seems nearly impossible one person alone can succeed at keeping him safe. As my children got older, the hazards only changed. Inhaling glue, playing with matches, small pink pills sold behind the bleachers of the middle school. You can stay up all night and still not count all the ways to lose the people you love. It seems to me, now that this is more than just a hypothetical, that a parent falls one of two ways when told a child has a fatal disease. Either you dissolve into a puddle, or you take the blow on the cheek and force yourself to lift your face again for more. In this, we probably look a lot like the patients. Kate is semi-conscious on her bed, her central line tubes blooming like a fountain from her chest. The chemo has made her throw up 32 times, and has given her mouth sores and such bad mucositis that she sounds like a cystic fibrosis patient. She turns to me and tries to speak, but coughs up phlegm instead. "Drowned," she chokes out. Raising the suction tube she's clutching in her hands, I clear out her mouth and throat. "I'll do it while you rest," I promise, and that is how I come to breathe for her. An oncology ward is a battlefield, and there are definite hierarchies of command. The patients, they're the ones doing the tour of duty. The doctors breeze in and out like conquering heroes, but they need to read your child's chart to remember where they left off from the previous visit. It is the nurses who are the seasoned sergeants, the ones who are there when your baby is shaking with such a high fever she needs to be bathed in ice. The ones who can teach you how to flush a central venous catheter, or suggest which patient floor kitchens might still have popsicles left to be stolen, or tell you which dry cleaners know how to remove the stains of blood and chemotherapies from clothing. The nurses know the name of your daughter's stuffed walrus and show her how to make tissue paper flowers to twine around her IV stand. The nurses may be mapping out the war games, but it is the nurses who make the conflict bearable. You get to know them as they know you, because they take the place of friends you once had in a previous life, the one before diagnosis. Donna's daughter, for example, is studying to be a vet. Ludmilla, on the graveyard shift, wears laminated pictures of Sanibel Island, clipped like charms to her stethoscope, because it's where she wants to retire. Willie, the male nurse, has a weakness for chocolate and a wife expecting triplets. One night during Kate's induction, when I've been awake for so long that my body has forgotten how to segue into sleep, I turn on the TV while she sleeps. I mute it so that the volume won't disturb her. Robin Leach is walking through the palatial homes of someone rich and famous. There are gold-plated bidets and hand-carved teak beds, a pool in the shape of a butterfly. There are 10 car garages and red clay tennis courts and 11 roaming peacocks. It's a world I can't even wrap my head around. A life I would never imagine for myself. Sort of like this one used to be. I can't even really remember what it was like to hear a story about a mother with breast cancer, or a baby born with congenital heart problems, or any other medical burden, and to feel myself cracked down the middle, half sympathetic, half grateful that my own family was safe. We have become that story, for everyone else. I don't realize I'm crying until Donna kneels down in front of me and takes the TV remote out of my hand. "Sarah," the nurse says, "can I get you something?" I shake my head, embarrassed to have broken down, even more ashamed to be caught. "I'm fine," I insist. "Yeah, and I'm Hillary Clinton," she says. She reaches for my hand and tugs me upright, drags me toward the door. "Kate will not even miss you," Donna finishes. In the small kitchenette where there is coffee brewing 24 hours a day, she fixes a cup for each of us. "I'm sorry," I say. "For what? Not being made of granite?" I shake my head. It just doesn't end. Donna nods, and because she completely understands, I find myself talking, and talking. And when I have spilled all my secrets, I take a deep breath and realize I've been talking for an hour straight. Oh my God, I say. I can't believe I've wasted so much of your time. It wasn't a waste, Donna replies. And besides, my shift ended a half hour ago. My cheeks flame. You want to go. I'm sure you have somewhere else you'd much rather be. But instead of leaving, Donna folds me into her ample arms. Honey, she says, don't we all? The door to the ambulatory operating suite yawns open into a small room packed with gleaming silver instruments, a mouth gilded with braces. The doctors and nurses she has met are masked and gowned, only recognizable by their eyes. Anna tugs at me until I kneel down beside her. What if I change my mind? She says. I put my hands on her shoulders. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I know that Kate is counting on you, and Dad and me. She nods once, then slips her hand into mine. Don't let go, she tells me. A nurse shepherds her in the right direction, onto the table. Wait till you see what we've got for you, Anna. She draws a heated blanket over her. The anesthesiologist wipes a red-tinged gauze pad over an oxygen mask. Have you ever gone to sleep in a strawberry field? They work their way down Anna's body, applying gelled pads that will be hooked to monitors to track her heart and her breathing. They administer to her while she's lying on her back, although I know they will flip her over to draw marrow from her hip bones. The anesthesiologist shows Anna the accordion mechanism on his equipment. Trash truck. Can you blow up that balloon? He asks, and places the mask over Anna's face. All this time, she doesn't let go of my hand. Finally, her group slackens. She fights at the last minute, her body already asleep but straining forward at the shoulders. One nurse holds Anna down. The other restrains me. It's just the medicine affects the body. It's just the way the medicine affects the body, she explains. You can give her a kiss now. So I do, through my mask. I whisper a thank you, too. I walk out of the swinging door and peel off my paper hat and booties. I watch through the postage stamp window as Anna is rolled to her side and an impossibly long needle is lifted from a sterile tray. Then I go upstairs to wait with Kate. Brian sticks his head into Kate's room. Sarah, he says, exhausted. Anna's asking for you. But I cannot be in two places at one time. I hold the pink Amesis basin up to Kate's mouth as she vomits again. Beside me, Donna helps lower Kate back onto her pillow. I'm a little busy right now, I say. Anna's asking for you. Brian repeats. That's all. Brian repeats. That's all. Donna looks from him to me. We'll be fine till you get back, she promises, and after a moment, I nod. Anna is on the pediatric floor, one that doesn't have the hermetically sealed rooms necessary for protective isolation. I hear her crying before I even enter the room. Mom, she sobs. It hurts. I sit down on the side of the bed and fold her into my arms. I know, sweetie. Can you stay here? I shake my head. Kate's sick. I'm going to have to go back. Anna pulls away. But I'm in the hospital, she says. I'm in the hospital. Over her head, I glance at Brian. What are they giving her for pain? Very little. The nurse said they don't like to over-medicate kids. That's ridiculous. When I stand, Anna whimpers and grabs for me. Be right back, honey. I accost the first nurse I can find. Unlike the staff in oncology, these RNs are unfamiliar. She was given Tylenol an hour ago, the woman explains. I know she's a little uncomfortable. Roxicet, Tylenol with codeine, naproxen, and if it's not on the doctor's orders, call and ask whether it can be put on there. The nurse bristles. With all due respect, Mrs. Fitzgerald, I do this every day, and so do I. When I go back to Anna's room, I am carrying a pediatric dose of Roxicet, which will either relieve her aches or knock her out so that she no longer feels them. I walk in to find Brian's big hands fumbling a Lilliputian clasp on the back of a necklace as he hangs a locket around Anna's neck. I thought you deserved your own gift, since you were giving one to your sister, he says. Of course Anna should be honored for donating her bone marrow. Of course she deserves recognition. But the thought of rewarding someone for their suffering, frankly, never entered my mind. We've all been doing it for so long. They both glance up when I come through the doorway. "Look at what Dad got me," Anna says. I hold out the plastic dosage cup, a poor second best. Shortly after 10 o'clock, Brian brings Anna to Kate's room. She moves slowly, like an old woman, leaning on Brian for support. The nurses help her into a mask and gown and gloves and booties so that she can be allowed in. A compassionate breach of protocol, as children are not usually allowed to visit protective isolation. Dr. Chance stands beside the IV pole, holding up the bag of marrow. I turn Anna so that she can see it. "That," I tell her, "is what you gave us." Anna makes a face. "It's gross. You can have it." "Sounds like a plan," Dr. Chance says, and the rich ruby marrow begins to feed into Kate's central line. I place Anna on the bed. There is room for both of them, shoulder to shoulder. "Did it hurt?" Kate asks. "Kind of." Anna points to the blood running through the plastic tubes into the slit in Kate's chest. "Does that?" "Not really." She sits up a little. "Hey, Anna." "Yeah?" "I'm glad it came from you." Kate reaches for Anna's hand and places it just below the central line's catheter, a spot that falls precariously near her heart. 21 days after the bone marrow transplant, Kate's white cell counts begin to rise, proof of engraftment. To celebrate, Brian insists that he is taking me out to dinner. He arranges for private duty nurses for Kate, makes reservations at XO Cafe, and even brings me a black dress from my closet. He forgets pumps, so I wind up wearing my scruffy hiking clogs with it. The restaurant is nearly full. Almost immediately after we are seated, the sommelier comes to ask if we want wine. Brian orders a Cabernet Sauvignon. "Do you even know whether that's red or white?" I do not think, in all these years, I have seen Brian drink anything but beer. I know it's got alcohol in it, and I know we're celebrating. He lifts his glass after the sommelier pours it. "To our family," he toasts. We click glasses and take sips. "What are you getting?" I ask. "What do you want to get?" "The filet. That way I can taste it if I get the sole." "What?" I fold my menu. "Did you hear the results of the last CBC?" Brian looks down at the table. I was sort of hoping we could come here to get away from all that. You know, just talk. I'd like to talk. I admit, but when I look at Brian, the information that leaps to my lips is about Kate, not us. I have no call to ask him about his day. He has taken 3 weeks off from the station. We are connected by and through sickness. We fall back into silence. I look around XO Cafe and notice that chatter happens mostly at tables where the diners are young and hip. The older couples, the ones sporting wedding bands that wink with their silverware, eat without the pepper of conversation. Is it because they are so comfortable they already know what the other is thinking? Or is it because after a certain point, there is simply nothing left to say? When the waiter arrives to take our order, we both turn eagerly, grateful for someone who keeps us from having to recognize the strangers we have become. We leave the hospital with a child who is different from the one we brought in. Kate moves cautiously, checking the drawers of the nightstand for anything she might have left behind. She has lost so much weight that the jeans I brought do not fit. We have to use 2 bandanas knotted together as a makeshift belt. Brian has gone down ahead of us to bring the car around. I zip the last Tiger Beat and CD into Kate's duffel bag. She pulls a fleece cap over her smooth, bare scalp and winds a scarf tight around her neck. She puts on a mask and gloves. Now that we are venturing out of the hospital, she is the one who will need protection. We walk out the door to the applause of the nurses we have come to know so well. "Whatever you do, don't come back and see us, all right?" Willie jokes. One by one, they walk up to say their goodbyes. When they have all dispersed, I smile at Kate. "Ready?" Kate nods, but she doesn't step forward. She stands rigid, fully aware that once she sets foot outside the doorway, everything changes. "Mom?" I fold her hand into mine. "We'll do it together," I promise, and side by side, we take the first step. The mail is full of hospital bills. We have learned that the insurance company will not talk to the hospital billing department, and vice versa, but neither one thinks that the charges are accurate, which leads them to charge us for procedures we shouldn't have to cover, in the hopes that we are stupid enough to pay them. Managing the monetary aspect of Kate's care is a full-time job that neither Brian nor I can do. I leaf through a grocery store flyer, an AAA magazine, and a long-distance rate announcement before I open the letter from the mutual fund. It's not something I really pay attention to. Brian usually manages finances that require more than basic checkbook balancing. Besides, the 3 funds we have are all earmarked for the kids' education. We are not the sort of family that has enough spare change to play the stock market. Dear Mr. Fitzgerald, this is to confirm your recent redemption from fund number 323,323,456. Brian D. Fitzgerald, custodian for Catherine S. Fitzgerald, in the amount of $8,369.56. This disbursement effectively closes the account. As banking errors go, this is a pretty major one. We've been off by pennies in our checking account, but at least I've never lost $8,000. I walk out of the kitchen and into the yard, where Brian is rolling an extra garden hose. Well, either someone at the mutual fund screwed up, I say, handling the letter to him, or the second wife you're supporting is no longer a secret. It takes him one moment too long to read it, the same moment that I realize this was not a mistake at all. Brian wipes his forehead with the back of one wrist. I took that money out, he says, without telling me? I cannot imagine Brian doing such a thing. There have been times in the past where we dipped into the children's accounts, but only because we were having a month too tight to swing the cost of groceries and the mortgage, or because we needed the down payment for a new car when our old one had finally been put to rest. We'd lie awake in bed feeling guilt pressed down like an extra quilt, promising each other that we would put that money right back where it belonged as soon as humanly possible. The guys at the station, they tried to raise some money, like I told you. They got $10,000. With this added to it, the hospital is willing to work out some kind of payment plan for us. But you said, I know what I said, Sarah. I shake my head, stunned. You lied to me? I didn't. Zan offered, I won't let your sister take care of Kate, Brian says. I'm supposed to take care of Kate. The hose falls to the ground, dribbles and spits at our feet. Sarah, she's not going to live long enough to use that money for college. The sun is bright. The sprinkler twitches on the grass, spraying rainbows. It is far too beautiful a day for words like these. I turn and run into the house. I lock myself in the bathroom. A moment later, Brian bangs on the door. Sarah, I'm sorry. I pretend I can't hear him. I pretend I haven't heard anything he said. At home, we all wear masks so that Kate doesn't have to. I find myself checking her fingernails while she brushes her teeth or pours cereal, to see if the dark ridges made by the chemo have disappeared, a sure sign of the bone marrow transplant success. Twice a day I give Kate growth factor shots in the thigh, a necessity until her neutrophil count tops 1,000. At that point, the marrow will be receding itself. She can't go back to school yet, so we get her lessons sent home. Once or twice she has come with me to pick Anna up from kindergarten, but refuses to get out of the car. She will troop to the hospital for her routine CBC, but if I suggest a side trip to the video store or Dunkin' Donuts afterward, she begs off. One Saturday morning, the door to the girl's bedroom is ajar. I knock gently. Want to go to the mall? Kate shrugs. Not now. I lean against the doorframe. It'll be good to get out of the house. I don't want to, although I am sure she does not even realize she is doing it. She skims her palm over her head before tucking her hand into her back pocket. Kate, I begin. Don't say it. Don't tell me that nobody's going to stare at me, because they will. Don't tell me it doesn't matter, because it does. And don't tell me I look fine, because that's a lie. Her eyes, lashed bare, filled with tears. I'm a freak, Mom. Look at me. I do, and I see the spots where her brows have gone missing, and the slope of her endless brow. And the small divots and bumps that are usually hidden under a cover of hair. Well, I say evenly, we can fix this. Without another word, I walk out of her room, knowing Kate will follow. I pass Anna, who abandons her coloring book to trail behind her sister. In the basement, I pull out a pair of ancient electric grooming clippers we found when we bought the house and plug them in. Then I cut a swath right down the middle of my scalp. "Mom!" Kate gasps. "What?" A tumble of brown waves falls onto Anna's shoulder. She picks them up delicately. "It's only hair." With another swipe of the razor, Kate starts to smile. She points out a spot that I've missed, where a small thatch stands like a forest. I sit down on an overturned milk crate and let her shave the other side of my head herself. Anna crawls onto my lap. "Me next," she begs. An hour later, we walk through the mall holding hands, a trio of bald girls. We stay for hours. Everywhere we go, heads turn and voices whisper. We are beautiful times 3. The weekend. There is no fire without some smoke. John Haywood. Proverbs. Jesse. Don't deny it. You've driven by a bulldozer or front-end loader on the side of a highway, after hours, and wondered why the road crew leaves the equipment out there where anyone, meaning me, could steal it. My first truck jacking was years ago. I put a cement mixer out of gear on a slope and watched it roll into a construction company's base trailer. Right now, there's a dump truck a mile away from my house. I've seen it sleeping like a baby elephant next to a pile of Jersey barriers on I-195. Not my first choice of wheels, but beggars can't be choosers. In the wake of my little run-in with the law, my father's taken my car into custody and is keeping it at the fire station. Driving a dump truck turns out to be a hell of a lot different than driving my car. First, you fill up the whole freaking road. Second, it handles like a tank, or at least like what I suppose a tank would handle like. If you didn't have to join an army full of uptight, power-crazy assholes to drive one. Third, and least palatable, people see you coming. When I roll up to the underpass where Duracell Dan makes his cardboard home, he cowers behind his line of 33-gallon drums. "Hey," I say, swinging out of the cab of the truck. It's just me. It still takes Dan a minute to peek between his hands, make sure I'm telling him the truth. "Like my rig?" I ask. He gets up gingerly and touches the streaked side of the truck. Then he laughs. "Your Jeep been taking some steroids, boy." I load up the rear of the cab with the materials I need. How cool would it be if I just backed the truck up to a window, dumped in several bottles of my arsonist special, and drove away with the place bursting into flames? Dan stands by the driver's side door. "Wash me," he writes across the grip. "Hey," I say, and for no reason except the fact that I've never done it before, I ask him if he wants to come. "For real?" "Yeah, but there's a rule. Whatever you see and whatever we do, you can't tell anyone about it." He pretends to lock up his lips and toss the key. 5 minutes later, we're on our way to an old shed that used to be a boathouse for one of the colleges. Dan fiddles with the controls, raising and lowering the truck bed while we're tooling along. I tell myself that I've invited him along to add to the thrill. One more person who knows only makes it more exciting. But it's really because there are some nights when you just want to know there's someone else besides you in this wide world. When I was 11 years old, I got a skateboard. I never asked for one. It was a guilt gift. Over the years, I got quite a few of those big-ticket items, usually in conjunction with one of Kate's episodes. My parents would shower her with all kinds of cool shit whenever she had to have something done to her, and since Anna was usually involved, she got some amazing presents, too. And then a week later, my parents would feel bad about the inequality and would buy me some toy to make sure I didn't feel left out. Anyway, I cannot even begin to tell you how amazing that skateboard was. It had a skull on the bottom that glowed in the dark, and from the teeth dripped green blood. The wheels were neon yellow, and the gritty surface, when you stepped on it in your sneakers, made the sound of a rock star clearing his throat. I skimmed it up and down the driveway, around the sidewalks, learning to pop wheelies and kickflips and ollies. There was only one rule. I wasn't supposed to take it into the street, because cars could come around at any minute. Kids could get hit in an instant. Well, I don't need to tell you that 11-year-old tell you that 11-year-old budding derelicts and house rules are like oil and water. By the end of my first week with this board, I thought I'd rather slide down a razor blade into alcohol than tool up and down the sidewalk yet one more time with all the toddlers on their big wheels. I begged my father to take me to the Kmart parking lot, or the school basketball court, or anywhere, really, where I could play around a little. He promised me that on Friday, after Kate had a routine bone marrow aspiration, we could all go out to the school. I could bring my skateboard, Anna could bring her bike, and if Kate felt up to it, she could rollerblade. God, was I looking forward to that. I greased the wheels and polished up the bottom of the skateboard and practiced a double helix on the driveway ramp I'd made out of old scrap plywood and a fat log. The minute I saw the car, my mom and Kate were returning from the hematologist, I ran out to the porch so we wouldn't waste any time. My mother, it turned out, was in a huge hurry, too, because the door to the van slid open and there was Kate, covered with blood. "Get your father," my mother ordered, holding a wad of tissues up to Kate's face. It wasn't like she hadn't had nosebleeds before, and my mom was always telling me, when it freaked me out, that the bleeding looked way worse than it actually was. But I got my father, and the two of them hustled Kate into the bathroom, and tried to keep her from crying, because it only made everything harder. "Dad," I said, "when are we going?" But he was too busy wadding up toilet paper, bunching it up under Kate's nose. "Dad?" I repeated. My father looked right at me, but he didn't answer, and his eyes were dazed and staring through me, like I was made of smoke. That was the first time I thought that maybe I was. The thing about flame is that it's insidious. It sneaks. It licks. It looks over its shoulder and laughs. And fuck, it's beautiful. Like a sunset eating everything in its path. For the first time, I have someone to admire my handiwork. Beside me, Dan makes a small sound at the back of his throat. Respect, no doubt, but when I look at him, proud, I see that he's got his head ducked into the greasy collar of his army surplus coat. He's got tears running down his face. Dan, man, what's going on? Granted, the guy is nuts, but still. I put my hand on his shoulder and he'd think, from his reaction, that a scorpion just landed there. "You scared of the fire, Danny?" "You don't have to be. We're far enough away. We're safe." I give him what I hope is an encouraging smile. What if he freaks out and starts screaming? Calls down some wandering cop? "That shed," Dan says. "Yeah, no one's gonna miss it. That's where the rat lives." "Not anymore," I answer. "But the rat..." "Animals make their own way out of a fire. I'm telling you, the rat will be totally cool." Chill. Well, what about the newspapers? He has one with President Kennedy's assassination. It occurs to me that the rat is most likely not a rodent, but another homeless guy. One using this shed as a shelter. "Dan, are you saying someone lives in there?" He looks at the crowning flames and his eyes fill. Then he repeats my own words. "Not anymore," he says. Like I said, I was 11, so even to this day I can't tell you how I made my way from our house in Upper Darby to the middle of downtown Providence. I suppose it took me a few hours. I suppose I believed that with my new superhero's cloak of invisibility, maybe I could just disappear and reappear somewhere else entirely. I tested myself. I walked through the business district, and sure enough, people passed right by me, their eyes on the cracks of the pavement or staring straight ahead like corporate zombies. I walked by a long wall of mirrored glass on the side of a building, where I could see myself. But no matter how many faces I made, no matter how long I stood there, none of the people funneling around me had anything to say. I wound up that day at the middle of an intersection, smack under the traffic light, with taxis honking and a car swerving off to the left and a pair of cops running to keep me from getting killed. At the police station, when my dad came to get me, he asked what the hell I'd been thinking. I hadn't been thinking, actually. I was just trying to get to a place where I'd be noticed. First, I take off my shirt and dunk it into a puddle on the side of the road, then wrap it around my head and face. The smoke is already billowing, angry black clouds. In the hollow of my ear is the sound of sirens. I have made a promise to Dan. What hits me first is the heat. A wall that's way more solid than it looks. The frame of the shed stands out, an orange X-ray. Inside, I can't see a foot in front of me. "Rat!" I yell out, already regretting the smoke that leaves me raw-throated and hoarse. "Rat!" No answer. But the shed isn't all that big. I get down on my hands and knees and begin to feel my way around. I only have one really bad moment, when I put my hand down on accident on something that was made of metal before it became a searing brand. My hand sticks to it, blisters immediately. By the time I fall over a booted foot, I'm sobbing, sure I will never get out. I feel my way up Rat, haul his limp body over my shoulder, stagger back the way I came. Through some little joke of God, we make it outside. By now, the engines are pulling up, charging their lines. Maybe my father is even here. I stay under the screen of smoke. I dump Rat on the ground, with my heart racing. I run in the other direction. With my heart racing, I run in the other direction, leaving the rest of this rescue to people who actually want to be heroes. Anna, did you ever wonder how we all got here? On Earth, I mean. Forget the song and dance about Adam and Eve, which I know is a load of crap. My father likes the myth of the Pawnee Indians, who say that the star deities populated the world. Evening Star and Morning Star hooked up and gave birth to the first female. The first boy came from the sun and the moon. Humans rode in on the back of a tornado. Mr. Hume, my science teacher, taught us about this primordial soup full of natural gases and muddy slop and carbon matter that somehow solidified into one-celled organisms called coenflagellates. That's how I'm guessing it's pronounced. Which sounds a lot more like a sexually transmitted disease than the start of the evolutionary chain, in my opinion. But even once you get there, it's a huge leap from an amoeba to a monkey to a whole thinking person. The really amazing thing about all this is no matter what you believe, it took some doing to get from a point where there was nothing to a point where there were all the right neurons fire and pop so that we can make decisions. More amazing is how even though that's become second nature, we all still manage to screw it up. On Saturday morning, I am at the hospital with Kate and my mother, all of us doing our best to pretend that 2 days from now, my trial won't begin. You'd think this is hard, but actually, it's much easier than the alternative. My family is famous for lying to ourselves by omission. If we don't talk about it, then presto, there's no more lawsuit, no more kidney failure, no worries at all. I'm watching Happy Days on the TV Land channel. Those Cunninghams, they're not so different from us. All they ever seem to worry about is whether Richie's band will be hired at Al's place, or if Fonzie will win the kissing contest, when even I know that in the 50s Joni should have been having air raid drills at school, and Marion was probably popping Valium, and Howard would have been freaking out about commie attacks. Maybe if you spend your life pretending you're on a movie set, you don't ever have to admit that the walls are made out of paper and the food is plastic and the words in your mouth aren't really yours. Kate is trying to do a crossword puzzle. What's a 4-letter word for vessel? She asks. Today is a good day. By this I mean she feels up to yelling at me for borrowing 2 of her CDs without asking. For God's sake, she was practically comatose. It isn't like she would have been able to give her permission. She feels up to trying this crossword. That, I suggest. Earn. 4 letters. Ship, my mother offers. Maybe they're thinking of that kind. Blood, Dr. Chance says, coming into the room. That's 5 letters, Kate replies, in a tone that's much more pleasant than the one she used with me, I might add. We all like Dr. Chance. By now, he might as well be the 6th member of our family. Give me a number, he means on the pain scale. 5? 3. Dr. Chance sits down on the edge of her bed. It may be a 5 in an hour, he cautions. It may be a 9. My mother's face has gone the color of an eggplant. But Kate's feeling great right now, she cheerleads. I know, but the lucid moments, they're going to get briefer and further apart, Dr. Chance explains. This isn't the APL. This is renal failure. But after a transplant, my mother says, all the air in the room, I swear, turns into a sponge. You'd be able to hear a hummingbird's wings. That's how quiet it gets. I want to slink out of the room like mist. I don't want this to be my fault. Dr. Chance is the only one brave enough to look at me. As I understand it, Sarah, the availability of an organ is under debate. But, Mom, Kate interrupts. She turns to Dr. Chance. How long are we talking about? A week, maybe. Wow, she says softly. Wow. She touches the edge of the newspaper, rubs her thumb over the point at its edge. Will it hurt? No, Dr. Chance promises. I will make sure of that. Kate lays the paper in her lap and touches her arm. Thanks. For the truth, I mean. When Dr. Chance looks up, his eyes are red-rimmed. Don't thank me. He gets up so heavily that I think he must be made of stone, and leaves the room without speaking another word. My mother, she folds into herself. That's the only way to explain it. Like paper, when you put it deep into the fireplace, and instead of burning, it simply seems to vanish. Kate looks at me, and then down at all the tubes that anchor her to the bed, so I get up and walk toward my mother. I put a hand on her shoulder. Mom, I say, stop. She lifts her head and looks at me with haunted eyes. No, Anna, you stop. It takes me a little while, but I break away. Anna, I murmur. My mother turns. What? A four-letter word for vessel, I say, and I walk out of Kate's room. Later that afternoon, I'm turning in circles on the swivel chair of my dad's office at the fire station, with Julia sitting across from me. On the desk are a half-dozen pictures of my family. There's one with Kate as a baby, wearing a knit hat that looks like a strawberry. Another with Jessie and me, grinning just as wide as the blue fish balanced between our hands. I used to wonder about the fake pictures that came in frames you buy at the store. Ladies with smooth brown hair and show-me smiles. Grapefruit-headed babies on their siblings' knees. People who in real life probably were strangers brought together by a talent scout to be a phony family. Maybe it's not so different from real photos, after all. I pick up one picture that shows my mother and father looking tanned and younger than I can ever remember them being. Do you have a boyfriend? I ask Julia. No, she says, way too fast. When I glance up, she just sort of shrugs. Do you? There's this one guy, Kyle McPhee, that I thought I liked, but now I'm not sure. I pick up a pen and start to unscrew the whole thing, pull out the skitty little tube of blue ink. It would be so cool to have one of these built inside you, like a squid. You could point your finger and leave your mark on anything you wanted. What happened? I went to a movie with him, like on a date, and when it was over and we stood up, I turned bright red. Well, you know, I wave in the general vicinity of my lap. Ah, Julia says. He asked me whether I'd ever taken wood shop at school. I mean, God, wood shop? And I go to tell him no, and bam, I'm staring right there. I put the decapitated pen down on my dad's blotter. When I see him now around town, it's all I can think about. I stare up at her, a thought coming at me. Am I a pervert? No, you're 13. And for the record, so is Kyle. He couldn't help it happening any more than you can help thinking about it when you see him. My brother Anthony used to say there were only 2 times a guy could get excited. During the day and during the night. Your brother used to talk to you about stuff like that? She laughs. I guess so. Why? Wouldn't Jessie? I snort. If I asked Jessie a question about sex, he'd laugh so hard he'd bust a rib, and then he'd give me a stash of Playboys and tell me to do research. How about your parents? I shake my head. My dad is out of the question, because he's my dad. My mom's too distracted, and Kate is in the same clueless boat I'm in. Did you and your sister ever fight over the same guy? Actually, we don't go for the same type. What's your type? She thinks about it. I don't know. Tall, dark-haired, breathing. Do you think Campbell's cute? Julia nearly falls out of her chair. What? Well, I mean, for an older guy. I could see where some women might find him attractive, she says. He looks like a character on one of those soaps that Kate likes. I run my thumbnail into the groove of wood on the desk. It's weird that I get to grow up and kiss someone and get married. And Kate doesn't. Julia leans forward. What's going to happen if your sister dies, Anna? One of the pictures on the desk is of me and Kate. We are little, maybe 5 and 2. It is before her first relapse, but after her hair grew back. We're standing on the edge of the beach, wearing matching bathing suits, playing patty cake. You could fold this picture in half and think it was a mirror image. Kate small for her age and me tall. Kate's hair a different color but with the same natural part and flip at the bottom. Kate's hands pressed up against mine. Until now, I don't think I've really realized how much alike we are. The phone rings just before 10 o'clock that night, and to my surprise, it's my name that's paged throughout the firehouse. I pick up the extension in the kitchen area, which has been cleaned and mopped for the night. Hello? Anna, my mother says. Immediately, I assume she's calling about Kate. There isn't much else for her to say to me, given the way we left things earlier at the hospital. Is everything okay? Kate's asleep. That's good, I reply, and then wonder if it really is. I called for 2 reasons. The first is to say that I'm sorry about this morning. I feel very small. Me too, I admit. In that minute, I remember how she used to tuck me in at night. She'd go to Kate's bed first and lean down and announce that she was kissing Anna, and then she'd come to my bed and say she'd come to hug Kate. Every time, it cracked us up. She'd turn off the light, and for long moments after she left, the room still smelled of the lotion she used on her skin to keep it as soft as the inside of a flannel pillowcase. The second reason I called, my mother says, was just to say goodnight. That's all? In her voice, I can hear a smile. Isn't that enough? Sure, I tell her, although it isn't. Because I can't fall asleep, I slip out of my bed at the fire station, past my father, who's snoring. I steal the Guinness Book of World Records from the men's room and lie down on the roof of the station to read by moonlight. An 18-month-old baby named Alejandro fell 65 feet 7 inches from the window of his parents' apartment in Murcia, Spain, and became the infant to survive the longest fall. Roy Sullivan of Virginia survived 7 lightning strikes, only to commit suicide after being spurned by a lover. A cat was found in rubble 80 days after a Taiwanese earthquake that killed 2,000 and made a full recovery. I find myself reading and rereading a section called Survivors and Lifesavers, adding listings in my head. Longest surviving APL patient, it would read. Most ecstatic sister. My father finds me when I have put the book aside and started searching for Vega. Can't see much tonight, huh? He asks, taking a seat beside me. It is a night wrapped in clouds. Even the moon seems covered with cotton. There we are. Nope, I say. Everything's fuzzy. You try the telescope? I watch him fiddle with the scope for a while, and then decide that it's just not worth it tonight. I suddenly remember being around 7, riding beside him in the car, and asking him how grown-ups find their way to places. After all, I had never seen him pull out a map. I guess we just get used to taking the same turns, he said, but I wasn't satisfied. Then what about the first time you go somewhere? Well, he said, we get directions. But what I want to know is who got them the very first time. What if no one's ever been where you're going? Dad, I asked, is it true that you can use stars like a map? Yeah, if you understand celestial navigation. Is it hard? I'm thinking maybe I should learn. A backup plan for all those times I feel like I'm just wandering in circles. It's pretty jazzy math. You have to measure the altitude of a star, figure out its position using a nautical almanac, figure out what you think the altitude should be and what direction the star should be in based on where you think you are, and compare the altitude you measured with the one you calculated. Then you plot this on a chart as a line of position. You get several lines of position to cross, and that's where you go. My father takes one look at my face and smiles. Exactly, he laughs. Never leave home without your GPS. But I bet I can figure it out. It isn't really all that confusing. You head toward the place where all those different positions cross, and you hope for the best. There was a religion of Anaism. I had to tell you how humans made their way to Earth. It would go like this. In the beginning, there was nothing at all but the moon and the sun, and the moon wanted to come out during the day, but there was something so much brighter that seemed to fill up all those hours. The moon grew hungry, thinner and thinner, until she was just a slice of herself, and her tips were as sharp as a knife. By accident, because that is the way most things happen, she poked a hole in the night and out spilled a million stars, like a fountain of tears. Horrified, the moon tried to swallow them up, and sometimes this worked, because she got fatter and rounder, but mostly it didn't, because there were just so many. The stars kept coming, until they made the sky so bright that the sun got jealous. He invited the stars to his side of the world, where it was always bright. What he didn't tell them, though, was that in the daytime they'd never be seen. So the stupid ones leaped from the sky to the ground, and they froze under the weight of their own foolishness. The moon did her best. She carved each of these blocks of sorrow into a man or a woman. She spent the rest of her time watching out so that her other stars wouldn't fall. She spent the rest of her time holding on to whatever scraps she had left. Almost done. Got 4 pages to finish, and then I'll cut it off for today. Brian. Just before 7 a.m. on Sunday, an octopus walks into the station. Well, it is actually a woman dressed like an octopus, but when you see something like that, distinctions hardly matter. She has tears running down her face and holds a Pekingese dog down in her multiple arms. "You have to help me," she says, and that's when I remember. This is Mrs. Zegna, whose house was gutted by a kitchen fire a few days ago. She plucks at her tentacles. "This is the only clothing I have left. A Halloween costume. Ursula. It's been rotting in a used store at locker in Taunton with my Peter, Paul, and Mary album collection." I gently sit her down in the chair across from my desk. "Mr. Zegna, I know your house is uninhabitable." "Uninhabitable? It's wrecked. I can put you in touch with a shelter, and if you like, I can speak to your insurance company to expedite things." She lifts one arm to wipe her eyes, and 8 others, drawn by strings, rise in unison. "I don't have home insurance. I don't believe in living my life expecting the worst." I stare at her for a moment. I try to remember what it is like to be taken aback by the very possibility of disaster. When I get to the hospital, Kate is lying on her back, holding tight to a stuffed bear she's had since she was 7. She's hooked up to one of those patient-managed morphine drips, and her thumb pushes down on the button every now and then, although she is fast asleep. One of the chairs in the room folds out into a cot with a mattress thin as a wafer. This is where Sarah is curled. "Hey," she says, pushing her hair out of her eyes. "Where's Anna?" "Still sleeping like only a kid can." "How was Kate's night?" "Not bad. She was in a little pain between 2 and 4. I sit down on the edge of her cot. "It meant a lot to Anna, you calling last night." When I look into Sarah's eyes, I see Jessie. They have the same coloring, the same features. I wonder if Sarah looks at me and thinks of Kate. I wonder if that hurts. It is hard to believe that once, this woman and I sat in a car and drove the entire length of Route 66, and never ran out of things to say. Our conversations now are an economy of facts, full of blue-chip details and insider information. "Do you remember that fortune teller?" I ask. When she looks at me blankly, I keep talking. "We were out in the middle of Nevada, and the Chevy ran out of gas, and you wouldn't let me leave you in the car while I looked for a service station? 10 days from now, when you're still walking in circles, they're going to find me with vultures eating out my insides," Sarah had said, and she'd fallen into step beside me. We hiked back 4 miles to the shanty we'd passed, a gas station. It was run by an old guy and his sister, who advertised herself as a psychic. "Let's do it," Sarah begged, "but a reading cost $5, and I only had 10. Then we'll get half the gas, and ask the psychic when we can expect to run out the next time," Sarah said, and like always, she convinced me. Madame Agnes was the kind of blind that scares children, with cataract eyes that looked like an empty blue sky. She put her knobby hands on Sarah's face to read her bones, and said that she saw 3 babies in a long life, but that it wouldn't be good enough. "What's that supposed to mean?" Sarah asked, Incensed, and Madame Agnes explained that fortunes were like clay and could be reshaped at any time, but you could only remake your own future, not anyone else's, and for some people that just wasn't good enough. She put her hands on my face and said only one thing: save yourself. She told us we would run out of gas again just over the Colorado border, and we did. Now, in the hospital room, Sarah looks at me blankly. When did we go to Nevada? She asks. Then she shakes her head. We need to talk. If Anna is really going through with this hearing on Monday, then I need to review your testimony. Actually, I look down at my hands. I'm going to speak on Anna's behalf. What? With a quick glance over my shoulder to make sure Kate is still sleeping, I do my best to explain. Sarah, believe me, I've thought long and hard about this one. And if Anna's thought through being a donor for Kate, we've got to respect that. But if you testify for Anna, the judge is going to say that at least one of her parents is capable of supporting this petition, and he's going to rule in her favor. I know that, I say. Why else would I do it? We stare at each other, speechless, unwilling to admit what lies at the end of each of these roads. Sarah, I ask finally, what do you want from me? I want to look at you and remember what it used to be like, she says thickly. I want to go back, Brian. I want you to take me back. But she is not the woman I used to know, the woman who traveled a countryside counting prairie dog holes, who read aloud the classifieds of lonely cowboys seeking women and told me, in the darkest crease of the night, that she would love me until the moon lost its footing in the sky. To be fair, I am not the same man, the one who listened, the one who believed her. And that is where I'm cutting it off today, with that sad note. And a marriage falling apart before our eyes. How delightful! Unless you're a child of divorce, which is probably hurting your soul to see this happening to someone in a fictional book. Did that sound condescending? I didn't mean to sound condescending. I'm so sorry if that sounded condescending. But yeah. That means I am officially all set to keep going with April. It's April? Yeah, it's April. I know my months. Bow, chicka, bow, wow. Yeah, I just unironically sang part of a Phineas and Ferb song. What are you gonna do about it? Aside from be prepared to vibe. I really tried to transition that train wreck of a moment into like a close of the episode. Oh my god. Sorry, I just found a pin on my floor and I'm trying to put it back in my pin cushion. My cat played with my pin cushion recently. She found it on the floor and thought it would be a silly, goofy moment to play with it. But, thanks for tuning in. I hope you're dying inside as much as I am. Thank you for vibing, and be prepared to vibe next time. Peace!